And now time for another episode of Lorehammer. This time we're going to really dive right headlong into the Skaven. I know a lot of you guys have been asking about them, so I cracked out the old Skaven book. They didn't upgrade it to the 8th edition, which was unfortunate, so it's only the 7th edition book, but still there's plenty of goodies to be had here. The Skaven you'll find are very crazy, very diverse. The army itself is really just eclectic. You take a look at some of the standard armies we look at. We look at dwarves, we look at elves and the wood elves, and we look at Bretonnia, we look at Empire, and we see pretty structured, very standard armies. And when you kind of jump into chaos or beastmen, you tend to see a little difference or variance in the army structures and whatnot. But with not lizardmen, but with Skaven, you're going to see something entirely different. A lot of their rules are built around randomness or fun things that are going to completely break the way the game works, or they're going to completely break you. It's going to be one or the other. That's kind of the fun dynamic of Skaven, is you're always laughing, even if you're losing, you're always having a good time, because maybe you've got your warp lightning cannon and it's poised to just destroy their lord, and it blows up in a second. And I see that mechanic coming into this game in a lot of ways, as they do with so many of the other tabletop rules that they've represented beautifully in Total War Warhammer. So the way I'm going to structure this, I want to go into a little bit about the clans, because every single, well, for the most part, all the unit entries include something about one of the 4 great clans. And it's just good to have this background going into it, so you understand the context of what it means when it says this clan A, this clan B. But just to give you an even further step back here, the Skaven are ruled by a Council of 13, is what it's called. And that Council of 13 is representative of 12 warlord clans. The 13th spot is symbolic, and it's reserved for the horned rat. The Skaven themselves worship the horned rat. Typically, the vermin lord would assume the 13th slot, because he's like a direct incarnate of the horned rat. Which, I mean, I'm really curious to see how they do these Skaven voices. Like, you've got Bretonians, which are like French. You've got these Northern European / Germanic Empire. You've got like the dwarves and the Dawi. But I wonder how they're really going to do the Skaven. Just give me like little chirpers the whole time, like, yes, whatever you want. Little tiny shits. But let's jump into the greater clans here, because like I was saying, there are 12 clans, but there are 4 greater clans. They're the main ones that comprise the majority of the units of the Skaven. And there are other clans like Clan Moors, which inhabits Carrick 8 Peaks, what they call the City of Pillars. But let's jump into these 4 great clans, and with some background on them in general. So, the greater clans. Some Skaven factions are very different to the warlord clans, the most famous of which are their greater clans: Clan Moulder, Clan Skryre, Clan Eshin, and Clan Pestilens. Each of these clans is the equivalent of scores of warlord clans in terms of influence, military might, and economic power. These 4 greater clans have ascendancy over the warlord clans, and each has its own specialization, armaments, and ways of waging war. And again, guys, these are coming just directly from the book. I wish I was as eloquent of a writer. But jumping into Clan Moulder here. Clan Moulder rose to infamy by mastering the art of breeding, mutating, and surgically creating monstrous fighting beasts. It is unknown how they stitch together disparate parts of mutated creatures, for they jealously guard their methods. It is no secret that Clan Moulder is one of the wealthiest of all clans, for the heinous creations are sold to the warlord clans, who are eager to boost their fighting prowess by adding swarms of giant rats, packs of towering rat ogres, or perhaps something even more bizarre. A portion of many warlord clans' military strength was birthed in Hellpit, the loathsome stronghold of Clan Moulder. While many are jealous of the power and might of Clan Moulder, few dare to openly deny them. At need, Clan Moulder can field an entire army of war beasts. And you'll definitely see that as I describe some of the more beastly units in the Skaven army, and where they kind of derive their origin from. And it'll even say outright, as I read through some of those, this is from Clan Moulder, more or less. But jumping into Clan Skryre here. Clan Skryre specializes in the insane blending of sorcery and arcane technology. Its members, known as Warlock Engineers, are inventors that build infernal devices capable of fiendish destruction. Many are sorcerers in their own right, able to manipulate the winds of magic to cast spells and intertwine enchantments into mechanical form. From their warp forges under the verminous capital of Skaven, Clan Skryre has produced untold weaponry, including the Poisoned Wind Globe, the Warp Fire Thrower, and the deadly Warp Lightning Cannon. Clan Skryre has risen to become, arguably, the most influential of all clans. By selling their weird arsenal of devastation to the warlord clans as quickly as slaves can churn them off their assembly lines, Clan Skryre has grown as wealthy as Clan Moulder. None dare offend Clan Skryre for fear of ending up at the wrong end of any number of weapons that could melt, blast, desiccate, or otherwise cause grievous death. And pushing in here to Clan Eshin. Shrouded in shadow and mystery, Clan Eshin is by far the most nefarious of the Skaven clans. They are feared as murderers, and the art of stealthy death is one that they have mastered. They are silent stalkers, more than capable of infiltrating past any number of guards or traps. At their disposal are a range of troops trained to kill, from the solitary assassins to the whole death squads known as gutter runners. For the right price, Clan Eshin will slay any rival, steal any information, or commit any act of sabotage required. No warlord wants to be targeted by a Clan Eshin contract, and the mere mention of the black-clad killers is enough to make any ratman look over his shoulder. There are Clan Eshin agents scattered throughout the strongholds of many warlord clans, and even hidden within the cities of the surface dwellers. The cool kind of thing about the Clan Eshin is that in the lore, in this book itself, it actually talks about how Clan Eshin learned to become assassins. They went far, far, far to the east in Japan, there's a region called Nippon, and Warhammer, there's a region called Nippon, and they basically learned to become rat ninjas. It's spot on what they've learned. So they come back and they learn all these assassin abilities and become more or less mercenaries, while at the same time growing to be a large, greater clan of Skaven. But jumping now into Clan Pestilens, and Clan Pestilens is pretty important here because a lot of people had comments about how Clan Pestilens isn't in Lustria. It is. Clan Pestilens comes from Lustria originally, and it moved from Lustria to start the very first Skaven civil war. Skaven, being conniving little shits, have tons of civil wars. But here's this bit on Clan Pestilens. Perhaps the most ill-regarded of all clans is Clan Pestilens. They are known as the Plague Monks, for they are the disciples of disease and decay. Members of Clan Pestilens dedicate themselves with insane fervor to spreading pestilence and corruption in the name of the Skaven god, the great horned rat. Their warriors are recognizable not just by their distinctive chanting, but by their horrible poxes they bear, for it is Clan Pestilens' doctrine that to spread disease one must bear the contagion within. Rather than sicken and die themselves, however, these infectious ratmen instead grow tougher, their hides thickened by the endless weeping sores and boo-boos. I'm sticking with that word. In battle, the zealous plague monks charge recklessly into the fray, eager to unleash their rabid hate. Clan Pestilens does not sell the fighting services of their brethren for mere profit. However, they do lend their warriors to any cause likely to aid their own. They often negotiate hard-driven alliances or promises of future support from warlord clans who are desperate for their backing. For major battles, Clan Pestilens has even been known to deploy some of its own specially created diseases, spreading such vileness upon the world as the Black Plague, the Red Pox, and the Oozing Eye Death. And if you've played the tabletop and you know about the various Chaos Gods, you kind of see that somewhat reminiscent in the Skaven. I mean, the Clan Pestilens is kind of like Nurgle. Clan Skryre is somewhat like Tzeentch in the sense that Tzeentch is all mages. Well, I mean, not entirely, but still, like the Changer of Waves is all about like witchcraft and magic. And Clan Eshin is somewhat like Khorne in the sense that they're just very good in close combat. And Clan Moulder, I guess you could somewhat argue, is similar to Slaanesh, because Slaanesh is all about like weird mutations to attain perfection and like lust and pleasure, while Clan Moulder is about weird mutations to attain Skavenness or whatever. But you kind of see that paralleled in the Skaven, which is pretty cool. But what we're going to do here is start jumping into the lords and heroes of the Skaven, just like we did with the High Elves, I'm just going to cover pretty much the exact way that they're done in the book. And the way that they're done in the book is, of course, Lords and Heroes, Core, Special, Rare, Special characters. So we're going to start off here with the Warlords and Chieftains, which are essentially their primary fighting lords. To hold the title of Warlord is to rule. A Skaven does not gradually earn respect or position, and there certainly is no giving in the brutal society of the ratmen. Leadership must be savagely taken. To gain power, a warlord must seize control, proving himself a top fighter and a devious adversary. Such a coup either ends in failure and certain death at the hands of the existing ruler, or the new leader supplants the current warlord, often eating him in the process. Challenges follow no format, but often take the form of personal combat, treacherous backstabbing, or elaborate political schemes. The more underhanded the deed, the better, for that is what puts the fear, and what almost passes for respect, into the Skaven masses. Skaven leaders are larger and more powerfully built than the warriors they ruthlessly command, but mere physical prowess is not enough to sustain control. Once a warlord has fought, betrayed, and clawed to the top, the battle really begins. Manipulation, the ability to set rivals upon each other, or the mustering of support from an insincere following are skills needed to hold power, as even the fiercest fighters become worn down by the constant challenges. Great wealth can augment battle skills, bribe underlings, or simply buy formidable aid. Warlords or of even minor clans attempt to buffer their personage with storm vermin bodyguards, the latest clan Skryre death-dealing invention, or hulking war beasts such as specially bred Rat Ogres steeds purchased from Clan Moulder. Especially coveted amongst many warlords are ostentatiously embellished war litters carried by the burliest of warriors. Any threat to a leader's position must be ruthlessly countered, and no effort is spared when eliminating rivals. As Skaven assume, quite correctly, that everyone is a potential rival, it is no small task prioritizing who should be dealt with first. Destroying upstarts can absorb the majority of a warlord's effort, but there is an upside, as the brutal removal of a traitor can make others think twice before attempting their own ruses. Particularly gruesome or elaborate deaths can buy a warlord hours of relative peace. To command for long, such scheming must come as naturally as breathing. A warlord cannot be everywhere at once, and so must build up a cadre of enforcers, loyal, for the moment, chieftains that can ensure that his word is law and that the warlord has a paw in all profitable ventures. In a small clan, this can mean dozens of subordinates, while for larger clans, this includes a hierarchy of warlords and thousands of chieftains. All commanders must aggressively take credit for positive outcomes and swiftly allocate blame for all that goes poorly. This ranges from tweaking the truth to outrageous lies. For instance, if an avalanche destroys large portions of the foe, the more convincingly a chieftain can take credit for the event. The more his esteem rises with subordinates. Yes, it is deadly to attack Chieftain Snarlock. And with warlords, the great horned rat watches over Snarlock. The fact that few believe such lies or blatant self-aggrandizement is neither here nor there. What is important is the small strand of possibility and the sheer audacity required to make such claims. It takes a great leader to speak great lies. So, you have the warlords of Skaven are very different in the sense that, they're not mounted on horses, they're not these big, huge warriors or these very skilled warriors like the elves. But they really get the job done. I mean, if you look at them on the tabletop, they're the whole linchpin behind the Skaven army. And I think we're going to see that a lot in Warhammer Total War because, the Skaven have poor leadership across the whole entire board, but they rely on their lords to basically add to their leadership. And the Skaven have a rule in the book that basically gives them additional leadership for extra ranks in their units. So I would be interested to see if the further a unit is from the Lord and the further down its number is, just like any other army, it would suffer a leadership penalty. But I wonder if in the Skaven that's going to be a little more magnified. And I wouldn't be surprised to see some sort of blue lines special skills for the warlords and chieftains. Warlords are the quote unquote lords for Skaven, and chieftains are the quote unquote hero. So we would see a chieftain being an agent, just in the same line as an empire captain. But it'd be interesting, though, to see like a large amount of blue line abilities that would help increase that range, or even leadership outright for the whole entire army. But the Skaven themselves, they have a bunch of different mounts. I'm not going to go into them too much because I don't know if we'll even really be seeing them. The only one we might really be seeing is what they call a war litter. You can kind of just think of it as the same thing that they use for Thorgrim. He's basically on a toilet. For the Skaven, it's basically 4 storm vermin holding him up on a bunch of spears. They stand on the spears and shields. And there's another one, though, where he rides on the back of a rat ogre, and there's another great pox rat. They never actually made models for these guys. People converted them. So it would lead me to believe that I don't really see them in the game. Most, if not all, Skaven warlords in tabletop were always, again, if not all, seen on foot. So it would surprise me if they did that. So I'm just going to kind of dodge those here. If enough people in the comments really want to hear about them, I can definitely fill you guys in when I do the next lore video, which may or may not be lizardmen. I don't know. Who knows? Could be dark elves. I don't make the rules. Yes, I do. But still, what we're going to do from here is go into the Grey Seers, and the Grey Seers are more or less the casting lords of the Skaven. You know, you've got your archmages and your nobles and princes in the High Elf army, like I was talking about. Well, you've got your warlords and your Grey Seers to be your casting lord in the Grey Seer and fighting lord in the chieftain. So let's go right on into these guys. The Grey Seers are also known as the chosen of the great horned rat, prophets of the Lord of the Great Bellow, and the voice of the horned rat. They are powerful sorcerers capable of channeling eldritch energies in destructive ways, leveling enemy armies with lightning or summoning ravening swarms of rats. Some Grey Seers ride atop the nightmarish screaming bell to unleash untold ruination. More important than their ability to dominate a battle, however, is their role as emissaries for the Council of 13, a position which often grants them top rank. Marked at birth by their extremely rare fur color, anywhere from pure gray to nearly white, Grey Seers are also different from other litter spawnings as they have small nub-like bony growths atop their heads. Should the Grey Seer live long enough, these will grow to become the fully formed horns that command instant fear and subjugation from all other Skaven. In their role as chief agents for the Lords of Decay, Grey Seers wield tremendous influence. The Grey Seers visit the warlord clans for many self-serving reasons, such as seeking aid, building alliances, or gathering a coalition against a common foe. The ability to call counsel with top warlords allows the horned sorcerers to access valuable insight and inside information, which they use to their own advantage. The fact that Grey Seers ever use such tidings to further their own ends is, of course, denied by Seer Lord Kritzilisk. He is the leader of the Grey Seers, who also happens to occupy the first and most important seat on the Council of 13. Kritzilisk. It is a really hard word to pronounce, guys. Kritzilisk spends so much time vehemently denying any abuse of position or the sacrosanct nature of all clan dealings that he occasionally misses opportunities to exploit such precious information. It is their role of intermediaries for the Council of 13 that grants the Grey Seers such power, and it is a position they jealously guard. Even implied displeasure from a Grey Seer causes such self-castigation, however insincere. Not even the greater clans can easily afford so much as the merest slight to a Grey Seer. When manipulations fail to influence a warlord clan, a Grey Seer can bring many pressures to bear. A key weapon in the Grey Seer political arsenal is their role as envoy of the Great Horned Rat. Grey Seers alone have the ability to summon a Vermin Lord, a threat often insinuated, but an act Grey Seers secretly wish to avoid. Luckily, no warlord wants to be accused of standing opposed to the will of the Great Horned One, or being anywhere near a Vermin Lord. Thus, the threat of summoning alone suffices to persuade even the most suspicious warlord to see the Grey Seer's point of view. Having the backing of a Grey Seer means a clan is in ascendancy and will gain supremacy in dealings with others. They may barter with the upper hand, and a Skaven with an advantage will press it mercilessly. It is always best to exploit such an advantage while it lasts, for it will only be a matter of time before the seers call with their own demands. In Skaven society, it is well known that absolutely nothing comes without a steep reciprocal price. Me being Italian, if the name didn't give it away, Grey Seers are kind of like the heads of the mafia for the Skaven. You know, like everyone fears them, everyone hates them, but they get the job done. And if you owe them a favor, it is terrible. So the kind of cool thing about Grey Seers is they're level 4 wizards. So it means right off the bat that they're your wizard lords. They're extremely strong. The interesting thing, though, about Skaven in general, they don't use the conventional lores. Just like the orcs. The orcs have the little wog and big wog. Skavens have their own 2 lores. Scare Leap or the dreaded 13th spell. So it'll be interesting to see these 2 new lores in the game, because High Elves are going to bring High lore, Dark Elves are going to bring Dark lore, and we'll see the Skavens bring their 2 respective lores as well. So it'll be really awesome to have just a whole new dynamic in the normal lores as well as these new additional ones. But the actual units themselves, they don't ride anything special. The Skaven are pretty much a non-mounted army, just like the dwarves. They do have monstrous beasts, but they don't have any real big mounts. The Grey Seers do mount their doom bells, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. But for the most part, they just kind of stay on the ground. So nothing really special with them, which I'm curious to see what they do again for this, because every single lord and the majority of the heroes have mounts in Total War Warhammer. So it'll just be kind of like the Skaven or Grimgor Ironheart, where they don't have much of anything. But I'm sorry, not the Skaven, the dwarves. So it'll be very interesting to see if they give them any of their special mounts. I mean, I could see them doing the Screaming Bell, kind of like what's his name? Volkmar the Grim and his pimped out Chariot of Doom. But we'll see exactly how this goes. But I want to jump into the Screaming Bell here, since it plays hand in hand. The Screaming Bell in and of itself is really crazy and has a bunch of rules behind it. And I don't know a ton of those rules. The Skaven were an army that I was never able to really jump headlong into. But like I said, needless to say, they're extremely random and awesome. But the Screaming Bell, no less. Of all the diabolical wonder weapons of the Skaven, none is as notorious as the Screaming Bell. The bell is an ever-present symbol in the creation legends of the Skaven, and its mighty toll strikes deep inside the black hearts of the evil ratmen, inspiring awe and the closest thing to devotion to a Skaven can achieve. It is from these unholy altars that the Grey Seers preach their plans of total domination in the name of the Great Horned Rat. The wheeled carriage that supports the vast weight of the ruinous engine is pushed by a teeming horde of Skaven, but it is the colossal bell atop it that radiates power. These unholy relics are cast in the hellish warp forges beneath Skaven Blight, using bronze laced with pure warpstone. The warlock engineers of Clan Skryre aid in the casting, joining the Grey Seers in the 13-day ritual. The monotonous chittering incantations cause glowing runes of balefire to writhe mystically across the bell as the casting is cooled. The metal is coated many times with sacrificial blood. Rumor has it that some pieces of the great tower of Kavzar is incorporated into each screaming bell, be it a chunk of masonry or some small part of the great bell that began it all, melted and forged anew. To work the immense weight, Clan Moulder supplies the pick of its hell-birthed litters, the most hulking of Rat Ogres. In battle, the ominous tolling of the bell resounds above the clamor of the fighting, a message of death to foes, but a declaration of supremacy that reverberates inside the children of the Horned Rat. The deadly peal drives Skaven recklessly forward in a fury that will be assuaged by nothing short of this total and complete annihilation of the enemy. The thunderous bong is magically amplified, and those that hear it and survive cannot find the words to describe the cacophony of horrible sounds that emit from the unholy bell. With each toll, the din grows louder and more terrible, rising to a crescendo of sound until the very mind seems to split asunder. The relentless oral assault causes the very stone to split and buildings to crumble. Doom, 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 it seems to endlessly say. All will fall, all will be ruinous. Doom, doom, doom. And that is a really cool notion about the bell, is that it does actually crumble buildings in the tabletop, which is cool. fucking cool. I can see that in siege warfare with this thing, helping to like catapult down walls or knock down towers or break open gates. And it like they were saying, it helps to boost the Skaven in that it helps them. It helps the big, leadership issue with Skaven, and that it keeps pushing them forward. It causes fear in and of itself. So it'll be very interesting to see what it does, because it's no slouch. It's meant for combat. It's got a toughness 6, which you guys don't really know what that means, but it equated to a high armor. And it also has got a lot of wounds, so it means it's got a high amount of hit points. It gets impact hits, meaning that whenever it charges into combat, it'll automatically deal damage because of charge. So this is a chariot meant to hit into people as it's gonging its giant bell the whole time. This Greyseer on top just chittering and chattering like a little shit and casting spells everywhere. So that I could definitely see as a mount, though, for the Greyseers, because it'll just be such an awesome thematic addition to the Skaven army, and a really cool centerpiece. But speaking of awesome additions and cool centerpieces, let's jump into the Vermin Lord, which are just really, 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 really awesome Skaven Lords. They recently got redunded with the end times. Ugh, as much as I hate to bring it up. And the new models for them are just really fucking cool. Like they're out of this world. And I'm hoping that they either do the Greyseers and the Vermin Lord, or the Greyseers and the Warlord, and like maybe the Vermin Lord is a later addition to the game, because the Vermin Lord is such an awesome creature, and it's the only way that, like, I would say the Skaven can fight toe to toe with, say, like a High Elf or Dark Elf dragon, or the Carnosaurs or the Lizardmen. So they need some sort of big monstrous creature, and they would get it in the Vermin Lord. So let me read this tidbit about them. There are few sights more revolting and more unnatural than a Vermin Lord, a demon of the horned rat. These horrific creatures exude an aura of might, creeping decay, and inscrutable knowledge, for they are nothing less than the power of the great horned rat made manifest. A Vermin Lord is at once majestic and disgusting, a living icon of ruin, the ultimate scavenger. Although such a being towers in height, it is lithe and quick, its movements evoking the fluid yet twitchy scruttling of rats. Great spiraling horns bedeck the Vermin Lord's head, and any onlooker finds that he cannot look away from the nightmarish creature, yet at the same time fervently hopes not to make eye contact. And this is wise, for even the passing attention of such an ancient and wicked being is enough to stop a man's heart. Few dare to meet a Vermin Lord's all-seeing gaze, for even an instant and none can hold it. To summon a Vermin Lord from across the Great Veil requires a sacrifice and ritual. Such creatures are not meant to walk the earth, and the natural world protests the Vermin Lord's warped presence. The air moves and seems to bend light, cradling the dreadful being in an aura of unholy contamination. Grass will blacken at the touch of a Vermin Lord's hooves, and all hope fades in its ruinous presence. Ominous foreboding precedes a Vermin Lord, and even the Lords of Decay fear being in the all-knowing presence of a living avatar of the Great Horned One. It is said that the Vermin Lord always knows the truth, and it is no use embellishing the truth or attempting to deceive such a fiend. The unearthly power of a Vermin Lord allows it to smell lies even as they are spoken. A Vermin Lord is eternally calculating a myriad interweaving plots, ever seeking the best path towards some desired end. The creature is never still, constantly pacing, stopping to tilt its head as if sniffing for the future. When the time for action comes, however, the Vermin Lord manifests all the feral savagery of the Skaven race. Its rage is terrifying to behold, and few mortals can stand against it. The sinuous body contains a might and strength to challenge a greater demon, and lesser creatures are swept aside in droves. At need, a Vermin Lord can summon a powerful and wicked glaive, which it swings in deadly and unstoppable arcs. The Greyseers hold the keys to summon the Vermin Lords, and they keep their rituals secret. Only at times of great need will the Greyseers attempt to tear the veil of reality, and they are loath to do so, fearing to summon up what they cannot dismiss. A Vermin Lord is wiser and more wicked than any living Skaven, and yet it retains its lust for power and its treacherous love of betrayal. A bargain struck with one of the Vermin Lords will bring great power to the supplicant, but as with all Skaven deals, the cost will be high. So, you get just a really terrifying unit in the Vermin Lord, because most things in the Skaven army are not cute, but they're endearing in their own way and kind of fun and charming in that kind of light. Like, oh, these guys are the warp lightning cannon screws up and it does this, or maybe the rattling gun can shoot into its own units. The Vermin Lord is just pure terror. It's a large target. It causes terror. It is also a level 4 demon, and it can cast spells from the dreaded 13th spell. So it's awesome to see that these giant creatures might be in the game, because they're really, really, really cool thematically again. And they're very different from the rest of the army. If the rest of the army is like, conniving, like slightly terrifying ratmen, which on their own are not anything big, but in droves are horrifying, this one huge creature kind of belies that, and I'm really excited to see them hopefully putting them into this. So we've gotten a little look at the Vermin Lords, the Grey Seers and the Warlords, but now we're going to kind of jump into the other boys in the band, as I like to say, the Plague Priest, the Assassin, and the Warlock Engineer. And I'm definitely going to see these guys as probably as agents for the Skaven, because they're not really, they don't really, I think have a place so much as lords as the other 2 or 3 possibly do. But I still think that they're going to be in the agent section at the very least. So let's jump on into Plague Priests here. Plague Priests are the most degenerate ratmen of the Disciples of Decay, otherwise known as Clan Pestilens. They lead their foul brethren in the creation of new and virulent diseases, forever searching for the ultimate plague that can weaken all nations so the Skaven can rise up and rule supreme. It is the Plague Priests who stoke the righteous fury of the Plague Monks, teaching litanies of hate and breeding intolerance for all customs outside their own rituals. Clan Pestilens members do not seek material wealth, but instead are utterly and insanely focused on their master works. It is the diseased but devoted Plague Priests who enforce their harsh discipline. Under the direct control of the Plague Lords, the Plague Priests lead the daily rituals, recording the results of their poxes and monitoring the many infections that are spread on to not just captives, but also Skaven slaves and even the Plague Monks themselves. Indeed, their own specially made diseases are not feared, but accepted as blessing from the bringer of pestilence himself. To be a living altar, a walking vessel of contamination, is the strident goal of every Plague Priest, who themselves lead by example. Bandages and robes barely cover their leathery hides or contain a priest's weeping boils. It is the Plague Priest's duty to ensure the cauldrons of 1,000 poxes, bubbling iron vats of untold filth, are never empty, but instead brim over with new and terrible diseases to contaminate the world. The Plague Priests claim the great harbinger of disease himself, the Horned Rat, grants them sorcerer's powers to aid their unholy mission. Whether their arcane might is granted by a divine presence or from a long study of the Book of Woe, there is no denying the noxious powers of the Plague Priests. Vomiting geysers of black death or cursing the enemy from afar so that he erupts with blistering boils. Plague Priests wield loathsome but potent magic. When the outcome of a battle has particular importance to Clan Pestilens, the Plague Priests may even sanction the building of a great plague furnace to accompany the Brotherhood on their divine mission to destroy all who oppose them. So, again, another spellcaster in the Plague Priests. These guys, though, pull the curveball on you, get access to the other lore, Pestilent Breath. So they can, they can use Pestilent Breath, which is not a lore. But the I want to go into the lore that they get, though, because it is called it's called the Skaven lore of plague, or not lore of plague. It's called the spells of plague, and a lot of it, though, is going to be probably excuse me, guys, is going to be like crowd control oriented and slowing down people and spreading a lot of poison. So we're going to see in general a lot of poison in the Skaven army on their units, hopefully to just kind of add a little flavor, because they have a lot of various ways to deal damage, and you'll see that as we go from here. But one thing I did kind of want to touch in is in this description of the Plague Priest, they talk about Skaven rising up and ruling supreme. And you've heard a lot of people kind of go, what's Skaven? There's no Skaven. Playing into the world's, into Warhammer's kind of understood mythos that the Skaven don't exist. And the reason behind that is that, like, all the arch-lectors in the Empire met and said, okay, we know the Skaven exist, But here's what we can't do. If we admit that they exist, we admit to them that they're a threat. And if we admit to them that they're a threat, they'll get paranoid and they'll attack us and they'll wipe us out. They know that the Empire knew that the Skaven could wipe them out. The Skaven, on the other hand, go, oh man, they don't know about us because they fear us. And there's only a matter of time before we go and take it over. Because if they knew, like, oh man, all the Empire knows about us, fuck it, we gotta kill him. We gotta kill him now. We gotta kill him right now. So it's just kind of like this implied ignorance for the sake of keeping the world whole, which eventually drives a wedge in the world because the Skaven kill off the lizard. Well, don't kill off the lizardmen, but they're the whole reason the lizardmen kind of have an issue with saving things at the end times. But I won't go into that terrible narrative. But the Plague Police are going to be really interesting because I think we're just going to see a really strong agent in them, and I'm wondering if we're going to see some sort of like a Skaven corruption mechanic, just like we've got chaos or vampiric corruption. And it would make a lot of sense because the High Elves and the Dark Elves don't need something like that, and the Lizardmen don't. So if we're going to see Total Warhammer 2 in a separate area at first until the grand campaign matches up, that mechanic will probably want to come back, some sort of corruption mechanic. And it would make a lot of sense if the Plague Priests are helping to spread that, because most of the time in a lot of the lores, the other races, especially the dwarves, they talk about plagues just ravenously destroying Carracks and stuff like that, and it's because of Clan Pestilens as a whole. But let's jump on over to the Assassins. You know, the interesting thing about this book, because it wasn't updated to 8th edition, it's not very well. For one, you notice the wording is a lot more not diverse, but it's a lot bigger words, definitely bigger words. But also, the layout of the book is a lot more scatterbrained. Usually, the lords and heroes are in one section, followed by core, followed by special, followed by rare, followed by special characters. In this, it's kind of just all over the place. So if you hear me turn in a bunch of pages, I'm not like frantically trying to find this. It's just that everything's all over the place. So without further ado, let us get into the Skaven Assassins. Skaven Assassins are the pinnacle of Clan Eshin warriors, elite killers in a class of their own. The few who know of their existence of the black-clad assassins fear them above all others. Rumors of their cutthroat abilities are whispered in fear. The Clan Eshin devils are invisible, and their very shadows are poisonous. Stealth and killing are the study of the Skaven assassin. All Clan Eshin warriors are trained to perform amazing feats of speed and dexterity. Only those that excel are considered for the more intensive training. It is then that the secret arts are taught, some of which are ancient techniques studied in the Far East, but many more are unique fighting styles of the ratmen's own devising. By the end of his long initiation, an assassin can jump many times his own height, hurtling over obstacles or backflipping to safety. He can run faster than a galloping horse and climb smooth surfaces with ease. In motion, an assassin is a blur, able to rain blows upon a foe or pluck arrows out of the mid-flight. Skaven assassins are so adept at hiding in the shadows that many suspect supernatural magic is at work. The art of sabotage, arson, and poison all form part of the assassin's deadly bag of tricks. Many assassins in training are lost as the regiment is grueling. The final tests are death missions assigned by Clan Eshin's ruling council, presided over by Lord Sneak, the leader of the clan and one of the Lords of Decay. After surviving such actions, an assassin is considered an acknowledged master in the methodology of murder. Not all of an assassin's work happens in isolated darkness. When the Skaven march to war, they are sometimes accompanied by Clan Eshin's finest hiding amongst their let me jump back there. When the Skaven march to war, they are sometimes accompanied by Clan Eshin's finest, hiding amongst their numbers. These death-dealing agents pose as a regular rank-and-file trooper until the moment is right. At this time, they cast off their disguise and leap into the position where they can do their most damage. Fighting with poison blades in each paw, an assassin can unleash a murderous flurry of attacks that is more than capable of striking down an enemy leader. At other times, an assassin will operate on the battlefield alone, turning up to wreak havoc behind enemy lines, setting time bombs, or using poisonous shurikens to slay targets of opportunity. So, really excited to see how they'll put these guys in. They'll kind of be like similar to, like an Empire Witch Hunter, which just has a lot of assassin abilities right out the gate. I wouldn't be surprised if if they kind of incorporate a lot of what's already in these guys, because they've got like sneaky infiltrator and hidden. So maybe a stock mechanic with some armor piercing, maybe an anti-infantry, or I don't want to say an anti-large, but I definitely think that putting this agent in your army to get on the field would actually be beneficial. I personally don't find that putting agents in your army when you fight on the actual field is as advantageous in, say, the campaign world as it is the multiplayer world. Like, definitely it's awesome when you have, say, a Vampire Count's army with White King and Isabella, or you use the Runesmiths and Dwarves. So I definitely see that the Assassins in this case will definitely be something you'd want to put in your army to just snipe down other lords, since your lord is not going to be a Grimgore Ironhide, or he's not going to be a Red Duke, but he's going to be, he's going to be able to pretty much spread the leadership and hold his own. But I think the Assassin's going to be a way for Skaven players to really combat other lords and contest them. There is a mechanic called Hidden for the Assassins, and it's the same thing with Dark Elf Assassins, where you can place them in a unit, and they are in that unit until it makes base contact with another unit, and then it's revealed, and they can just go to town, ripping shit up. And I'd love to see that. I'd love to just see... I mean, stock mechanic is one thing, but you know how a Regiment of Renown, you don't know it's a Regiment of Renown by just hovering over it. You have to actually see how it fights. And it'd be interesting to see that unit would be hidden all the way till contact with the enemy, and then, of course, it's revealed that the assassin's there. But I'd be really interested to see that mechanic come into this game, especially because the Dark Elf Assassin has it too. So it wouldn't surprise me if that kind of snuck in there. But we're going here to the last hero, and the hero of the clan Skryre, which is the Warlock Engineers. And if you've got the I want to say it's the 5th edition book of Skaven, the Warlock Engineer is right there on the cover, just glaring at you. But the notorious Warlock Engineers of Clan Skryre are the artificers of Skaven society, blending arcane sorceries with technology in an insane and mind-boggling mix. For the other races of the world, it is hard to differentiate or define where the science stops and the powers of magic begins, although such delineation never occurs to Skaven. Warlock Engineers see the two elements as one and the same, machines and sorcery blended together to create impressive killing power. On the battlefield, it is readily apparent that some of the Warlock Engineers are able to channel and cast magic in the traditional ways understood by the races of the world. They harness the energies of the winds of magic and channel it to foul Skaven effects. Whether or not this is done with the aid of warped machinery is unknown. Although they can cast and counter magic, the Warlock Engineers are not nearly as adept at sorcery as the Horned Grey Seers. Some Warlock Engineers are unable to cast spells at all, but instead seem wholly absorbed with the building and firing of a variety of mechanical weapons, capable of dangerous and unperceptible effects. Warlock Engineers appear as other Skaven, but it is invariably harder to discern their shapes, as they are typically covered in whirling, hissing, clanking contraptions of their own devising. The normally twitchy Skaven energy is partially confined due to the number of wires and attachments that trail behind the clan Skryre ratmen. There is a frightening tendency towards body part replacement amongst many Warlock Engineers. This is partly due to limb loss from explosive mechanical mishaps, but disturbingly much of it is by choice. The endlessly tinkering engineers are always assured that they can build a better one, and so eyes, limbs, and more are gleefully replaced with cog-driven mechanical parts. At the heart of most Warlock Engineer upgrades is the driving force behind all Skavendom, the dreaded Warpstone. The green-black luminescent stuff is used as a power source, providing potent chaotic energies to many strange and diabolic devices. The sorcerer inventors often go to war carrying many of their latest devices. This seems to be true for both the sorcerer rats that can cast magic and those that function along the more traditional engineer role. From handheld weapons such as warplock muskets or poisoned wind globes of devastating potency, to blades powered by crackling warpstone energies, the anarchic arsenal of the Warlock Engineers is both varied and destructive. So, we already see engineers in the game with the dwarves, and it's going to be exciting to see another kind of take on engineers with these guys, because they use spells from the Skaven spells of ruin. So they have, of course, their own little lore, just like the other 3 that I've mentioned so far. The Plague one, the Squeak Hop, or whatever the hell it is. Let me look at it again here. Skitter Leap, or the dreaded 13th spell. So it's cool to see so much diverse magic in the Skaven, just like you do in Chaos, because Chaos can actually choose from their respective Lord minus Khorne's lore, and I wish that they had put that into the base game, and hopefully we'll see it in what I've heard rumored is going to be the 3rd game with the demons, but that's neither here nor there because we're talking about Skaven. But the Warlock Engineers, I think they're going to be a very interesting agent as well, because they're probably going to help with construction cost. They're probably going to aid some way all of the many war machines that accompany or weapon teams that accompany the Skaven. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see how they kind of incorporate them as agents, and if they even take the route of agent with the Warlock Engineers. But that really rounds off all of the lords and heroes. Let's dive into the next section here, starting with the core units. So we're going to go into the clan rats. And I almost got ahead of myself. I got to read the clan rats portion first. Jesus. So the bulk of most Skaven armies are formed of clan rats, a vast and verminous horde of ratmen that make up the warrior class. These Skaven belong to any one of thousands of clans scattered throughout the underground burrows, strongholds, and bursting cavern cities that make up the Under Empire. Of all the teeming masses, only the worker dregs, the shiftless Skaven slaves, are more numerous than the clan rats. Clan rats are slightly smaller than man-sized, standing 4 to 5 feet high. They range between lithe and scrawny and are possessed of a constant energy, most commonly seen in a nervous twitching of their hairless worm-like tails. A single clan rat is not a fearsome opponent. A lone warrior will lack any degree of discipline or determination and is likely to skulk in the shadows, afraid to go forward, too cautious to go backwards. Unless driven by black hunger, a single clan rat will only attack something that is visibly weakened or crippled, preferring even then to attack unseen from behind. When banded together in a large pack, however, Skaven bolster each other's confidence and fuel their feral ferocity to a highly aggressive level. This allows the individually cowardly ratmen to form massive units that will recklessly hurl themselves into a fray against even obviously superior troops. Like all Skaven, clan rats are hierarchical bullies that will go out of their way to kick, maim, and otherwise keep down any beneath their own rank, in their case the lowly Skaven slaves. Similarly, the clan rats will fawn over and prostrate themselves before anyone else. In their case, everyone but Skaven slaves. In larger Skaven strongholds, many clans coexist in a constant power struggle, and most clan rats will know and spend an inordinate amount of time dwelling upon which clan's claw leaders or chieftains are on the decline, and therefore vulnerable. When a warlord gathers his might for war, the clan rats are front and center, occupying a key place in the battle line. They form into great blocks to overwhelm a foe with their weight of numbers and the fury of their attacks. If the warlord can afford the price and is in a reasonable standing with the clan Skryre, then a weapon team might accompany the regiment. These arcane devices of destruction are viewed suspiciously by the clan rats, who frequently suffer due to their all too frequent technical failures. After the adrenaline burst of melee, clan rats need to feed or suffer the unbearable pangs of black hunger. Immediately following any combat, the ratmen scour the battlefield, devouring the dead and injured of friend and foe alike. So, there's really nothing overly special about clan rats, like as far as like rules go. The big thing with them is though, they're fast and like they move quickly, and they will otherwise like they cost so little in points in the actual tabletop that you can mass so many of them. So I'd be interested to see, like, I wouldn't be surprised actually to see in like a la zombies or skeletons, like 120 unit clan rats, just bristling little bastards all scuttling at you all fast and quick. So, and I think it's going to be cool too, because we've got horde armies in in the greenskins and kind of in vampire counts, but the Skaven, their purpose is a horde army. They are the Zerg or the Tyrannid of the fantasy universe, in the sense that there's just so fucking many of them. And we kind of briefly touched on the Skaven slaves. I want to go into them first. We'll kind of build up the hierarchy of the core unit, because you've got the clan rats, you've got the slaves, you've got the storm vermin, and you've got some of the night runners, which are all just varying levels of clan rat, minus the Skaven slave. But the storm vermin are more elite versions of clan rats, and the night runners are basically clan Eshin versions of them. So we'll get into them right now. I don't want to get again too far ahead of myself, but what you'll see in a lot of these pictures and in a lot of these model variations is, especially the storm vermin, kind of model themselves loosely after samurai, in the sense that like their armor is overlapping plates. Not that the samurai used plate, but still, my point is like that they have that same kind of like segmented look to their armor, which is really cool. They don't have like traditional dough and stuff like that, but they still kind of have that general look, which is kind of cool because it's a very different look than what an actual samurai looks like. So it's a kind of a really neat aesthetic that I really enjoy. And the storm vermin themselves, which we're gonna jump into shortly here, are some of my favorite units in the Skaven army, followed by the Warplock Jezzails and the Warp Lightning Cannons, which we'll get to. But again, let's jump on over here to the Skaven slaves. Read a little blurb about them, because they have a special rule called expendable, to give you an idea of how expendable they are. Chuffed to bits, I crack myself up. So the Skaven slaves. The Under Empire is run by slave labor. Skaven slaves perform all menial tasks, including mining, tunneling, and food production. In lean times, they themselves become the food. The majority of slaves are Skaven born into bondage, the lowest class of a hierarchical society. Their ranks swell as rival clans are captured during internecine wars. At times, even non-Skaven become slaves, although a few other races last under the whips of the ratmen overseers. The life of a Skaven slave is cruel, but mercifully short. Food is so rare that cannibalism is the way of life, and each day is a battle for survival. A slave with the slightest injury, a limp, or a disease-swollen eye, is hungrily marked by his pack. These wretched creatures attempt to hide such maladies, but the keen Skaven sense of smell cannot be fooled. The crippled are soon devoured as the ravenous horde turns upon itself. In warfare, Skaven slaves are used en masse to absorb missile fire and to overwhelm the foe with numbers. A common warlord tactic is to whip Skaven slaves to the fore of an assault. Many are butchered, but the loss is acceptable if the slaves bear the brunt of incoming arrows or tire the foe for the next attack wave. The best Skaven slaves will even pull down and tear to pieces a few of the adversaries. Although this is considered a bonus, some Skaven slaves use slings to inflict damage from afar, while others are lucky enough to have scrounged spears or shields to aid them in battle. It is not unheard of for Skaven slaves to survive a battle, although this is inconvenient for overpopulated lairs. In desperate times, the boldest of Skaven slaves may be granted a chance to become clan rats. Slaves who break in battle, however, are shown no mercy. Those not slain by the enemy are trampled underfoot by the oncoming attack waves of their own side. It is commonly said that the most dangerous Skaven slave is one that is running, for he may turn to fight at any time. So, again, you have a very expendable unit, even cheaper than the clan rats, and even shittier as a unit than the clan rats. I'm curious to see just a giant unit of these guys to just tar pit people or just otherwise just get completely run over. But nothing too crazy with them. A lot of the core units don't have anything insane about themselves, and like, oh, okay, this guy's got really great. Like when you look at the high elves, each one of their special units is a very specialized focus. A lot of the core units, they do have specialized focuses, but nothing really makes them stand apart outside of their point cost. They're a little bit better at being fighters, like the Storm Vermin have a higher innate, what you would call melee attack in Total Warhammer. So they are better at fighting, but there's not a whole bunch of special rules behind them, which makes the Skaven very interesting because the units themselves speak for themselves without special rules needed to be tacked on. Like if you're looking at a Storm Vermin, which has got a weapon skill 4, the Clan Rat has weapon skill 3, and a Skaven Slave has got weapon skill 2. So you get an idea for what these units are like without even actually having to have special crazy rules with them. But with the Storm Vermin, I think we'll see some special rules in game, such as like armor piercing and the capabilities to maybe be anti-large because they have giant glaives. But here's the section on the Storm Vermin. The Storm Vermin are the fighting elite of the Skaven warlord clans. They are distinguishable from their scrawnier little litter mates, often standing a full head taller, with thick muscular necks and a powerful build. Most Storm Vermin are marked at birth, as their size and darker fur color is recognizable. As the largest and most aggressive, young Storm Vermin to be typically outfight the rest of their litter for precious food. If the young warriors are particularly strong, the weakest of their litter actually become the food. Should they survive the traumatic politics and backstabbing as their litter pack jockey for position, the strongest Skaven will be assigned the regiments of Storm Vermin. Storm Vermin regiments are outfitted with the best gear of war in the clan's armory, and their duties may include forming a retinue of bodyguard for anyone from a minor chieftain to the mighty ruling clan warlord himself. This puts the Storm Vermin at the vanguard of the army, where they can ensure continued preferential treatment by fighting with ferocity and zeal for their leaders. Most warlord clans maintain the unwritten law that the first feed after a battle belongs to the Storm Vermin. Those who dare to feast before their proper station are often openly attacked by the elite Skaven warriors, who take any opportunity to violently demonstrate their favored status. As further reward, many Storm Vermin regiments are assigned their own legions of Skaven slaves. These lackeys see to the comfort and needs of their master. For political purposes and as a display of might, Storm Vermin regiments will sometimes leave their clan. This is often when a Gracier purchases or requisitions help from a warlord clan, but it could be sojourns at a faraway rival strongpoints or dangerous spots among the underway. It is not unheard of for warlord clans to sell the service of their elite warriors. Clan Rictus, for instance, is especially famous for breeding great numbers of jet black Storm Vermin. So again, the more elite of the fighting force for the Skaven, and what's interesting in just from a tabletop perspective is that these are still the core units that we're talking about that are their quote unquote elite. So what I would be interested to see is if in Total War Warhammer is if we got access to the Storm Vermin on like building number 2 for like the barracks type infantry recruitment building for Warhammer 2. I'd be for Skaven. I'd be very interested to see that because it would play in very much so to this kind of dynamic that their core units are their elite units, you know. But if you haven't noticed that a lot of what we see in these descriptions, they talk about eating after the battle. So again, I wouldn't be surprised if, just like the Savage Orcs, there's a capability to eat the dead to give them a large bolster to replenishing their casualties. In fact, I could see it as being maybe even larger than the Savage Orcs, because that's just kind of the entire army is based off of that. And kind of with that, I want to go into a fun unit called the Rat Swarms, which are a lot like the Bat Swarms of the Vampire Counts. But these I could see being in the game just from kind of like a perspective of having annoying little shit creatures to just harass maybe harass artillery or backlines, because they don't really the Skaven don't have a ton of fast units a la cavalry or flying units like the other races, so they're going to need something that can help flank or put pressure on a backline to help reduce micro, something like that. And I can see it with the giant rats and the Rat Swarms. We'll get into these two right now here. So the Rat Swarms. The cess-filled streets of the human cities of the Old World teem with life, much of which isn't human. Rats, vermins of all sizes, have grown bold in their numbers. They infest the rot-filled timbers of the sagging townhouses, tunneling nests into thatch, tirelessly gnawing through wattle and daub. They have grown brazen enough to be seen scurrying in the gutters and alleyways of main streets, even under the bright light of day. By night, the rats are legion, their eyes glowing red in the passing flicker of the night watch's lanterns. The ancient sewers that drain the city's filth are breeding pits that swarm with rats beyond number. Some of the gnawed skeletons that are piled amidst the refuse are doubtlessly the sad remains of the dispossessed, but the sewer jacks sent to repair the drains think it is more than that. It is whispered that the citizens of the poorest districts go missing in the night, perhaps falling victim to the insatiable hunger that lives beneath the city? The presence of a Skaven army has an alarming effect on ordinary rats. They congregate in a numberless tide at the feet of their larger cousins. Whether this living carpet of vermin comes in an answer to some sorcerous calling or to pay homage to the great horned one, none can be sure. But knowingly or not, the rats perform service to the Skaven. A few rats will become ensorcelled and be assigned spying missions by the suspicious and watchful Graciers. Clan Pestilens will infect many rats as they seek to spread new plagues amongst the world. Vast quantities of vermin will be eaten by the lowly and desperate. But the majority of rats will accompany the marching Skaven army and join the attack in swarms. Whether it is bursting out of the sewers of a human city or overrunning an orc camp, the chittering mass of rats can pull down and devour a man-sized creature, leaving naught but bones. But you can see here real quick from the models that these guys are in fact one little base covers tons of little tiny rats. So it's very interesting to see if they'll be including that, because I think that they will just to have some sort of quote-unquote fast attack unit in the Skaven that can harass and keep pressure on the front line. And maybe that's a tier 1 thing to get access right away, and maybe giant rats will be something that'll unlock down the road, a la like a tier 2 or 3 building. But I wouldn't really see that happening, but still. Let's jump into the giant rats since it's important here too. Clan Moulder long ago unlocked the secrets of growing, mutating, and surgically augmenting rats. At a distance, these creatures might be mistaken for large dogs, but on closer inspection, their foul and unnatural disposition is all too clear. Like their smaller cousins, giant rats have hairless tails and feet, but unlike their natural brethren, giant rats exhibit rampant signs of severe mutation and diabolic grafting so frequent in Clan Moulder-made beasts. Many giant rats have additional heads, sets of extra limbs, multiple tails, or even more monstrous additions. Spines, spikes, tusk-like incisors, or vast hunches of bony plates can be almost commonplace. While some of the more grotesque creations have exposed ribs, enormous mounds of throbbing, again this word, buboes, or worse. Giant rats have even been seen walking upright in parody of man, or gifted with odd technical parts such as wheels or mace-enhanced tails. Regardless of their bewildering variations, all giant rats are vicious, wicked, and eternally hungry. Driven to battle by pack masters or by a master Moulder, giant rats form a seething and snarling mass that seeks to rip, tear, and gnaw at any enemy that they can reach. When deployed in number, their powerful jaws and wicked saber-like incisors can bring down far larger prey. Given free rein, the horrid creatures will strip all flesh from their victims. In a matter of moments, there will be naught left but cracked and gnawed bones. Giant rats are easy to breed and by far the cheapest beasts on offer from Clan Moulder. A few pack of giant rats are a common sight amongst the warlord clans. A few clans, notably Clan Mortkin and Clan Carrion, have been known to dye the hides of their giant rats, branding clan symbols into the mangy fur in the same way that Skaven slaves are marked. So I'd see giant rats being played very similar to the way that we see dire wolves in the vampire count armies, or the chaos hounds and all the chaos armies. So just this ravenous pack of beasts just harassing the back line. And if they're playing against me, then it'll be destroying my entire back line, because I just hate protecting mine. But let's jump into the second to last core unit here, the gutter runners. And the gutter runners are really, I'm sorry, not the gutter runners, the night runners. We'll get to the gutter runners. The night runners are a particularly cool unit because they're kind of like the core unit / assassin core unit to do some kind of quick damage here. So the night runners are night runners. Night runners are the most common clan Eshin warriors, although they are still secretive like all their mysterious clan. Trained to move at speed, night runners strike quickly to prepare the way for Skaven armies. Small, furtive units sneak from shadows to seize key terrain features, while larger blocks of night runners scurry ahead of the Skaven lines to harass and slow down the foe. Night runners fight with blades in each hand, although many employ slings to rain death on enemy war machines or poorly armored elites. A typical ruse is to slink off to the army's flanks, hoping to lure pursuit into a hastily prepared ambush. Casualties are often high amongst Night Runner packs, for they work deep in enemy territory. This is not unexpected by their clan Eshin masters. Only those that survive many actions can hope to advance to the more highly trained squads of the Gutter Runners. Night Runners often work in conjunction with Gutter Runners, drawing out enemy reserves to allow the Infiltrator Supreme to strike an exposed vital target. On great occasion, the Night Runners are given a Warp Grinder tunneling team to burrow beneath the foe and emerge upon the enemy's flanks or rear. This tactic is almost always a suicide mission, but the deaths of the Night Runners can provide a worthwhile distraction. A Night Runner who has advanced to Night Leader, the champion of the stealth pack, is given many secret tasks for his unit to perform. These missions provide the final tests to ensure that only the most skilled advance to the next circle of training. The slightest misstep, such as a blade reflecting moonlight or the creak of a hidden trapdoor, is enough to jeopardize the mission and the entire unit. So again, I would be very interested to see these guys having another stock mechanic, probably an AP mechanic, if not an anti-infantry one. It'd be interesting too to see if they include slings with them, because you can outfit them with slings. So it'd be interesting to have kind of I would also see Vanguard deployment being kind of part of this as well, because one of the rules they have is that they can place after both armies have placed. So okay, they must remain more than 12 inches away from any enemy model at the time of their move. So they can be just dropped all the way in the front, 12 inches from the closest model. So I would see that Vanguard deployment being played out with these guys as well, and it'd be interesting to see them either having the capability to be with those slings, like I was saying. But one of the cool things about the clan rats and just the cores in general is the capability to put weapons teams in them, and the weapon teams are pretty cool because they can just be dropped into whatever unit you want, pretty much. And I'm kind of curious how they're going to do this, because since they go with the team, I don't know if you'll be able to produce them separately. Like maybe you have like a clan Skryre building, and the clan Skryre building can produce these guys as a separate unit, or maybe you can add that unit into it. I'm not sure. Like, you know how you can have miners with blasting charges, or just miners, or you can have quarrelers with great weapons, or just quarrelers. So I'm not sure quarrelers. So I'm not sure if you can have clan rats with warp fire throwers, clan rats with rattling guns, or so on and so forth. But there's not a lot of these on these guys as far as the little text blurbs go. So this will go quick, but you've got a variation of teams here, and it's usually run by 2 rats, and each weapon is just so fun. Like the rattling gun can sometimes just sputter shots into its own units, and this is a very important thing with Skaven, and a very awesome mechanic I think we'll see play out here. But Skaven can shoot into their own units. They're the only army that can do that, and when they do, they have to roll a die, and it's like on a 1 to 3 it hits the enemy, on a 4 to 6 it hits the Skaven. So it'd be very interesting to see, an army where their ranged units just don't stop firing even during engagements. And if they're Skaven slaves, they don't stop firing no matter what, even if they kill slaves. They don't even give a shit. So I'm really interested to see if they put that into this game, because it would be a very different dynamic than any other of the other armies out there. I think maybe the Greenskins have a mechanic like this for goblins, but someone feel free to please comment if you know that exists and I'm just drawing a blank on it. But it just would be pretty cool to just see like non-stop little rattling guns, which basically look, as you'll see soon, like little Gatling guns. Hence rattling Gatling. Ha! Those fucking Skaven, so clever. But here's a little bit about the Warp Fire Thrower. The Warp Fire Thrower hurls a blast of unnatural flame. One crew member carries a fuel vat and the other aims the nozzle. A flip of a switch and a powdered warpstone mixes with onrushing chemicals, bursting into unholy flame. The hellish gout can turn an entire formation into a twitching, throbbing pile of smoldering goo. So you have basically a flamethrower. And each one of these things just looks decrepit and haggard and shitty, and like it shouldn't work. And that's kind of, again, the charm of the Skaven. They think they're geniuses. They think they've got it all figured out, and they have just this ramshackle crap ass assembly of special weapons that are they work like 3% of the time, you know, like, and that's the kind of the cool thing about this. Like, all these things have a misfire chart, and the misfire chart either does nothing, it does what you want it to do, or it kills your own guys. And so you're like, oh god. So that's the kind of, again, that's the cool thing about Skaven, because you don't really care so much about the units individually, they cost so little, is that it's interesting just to watch them just mow through their own units and have good fun. So I'd be interested to see them throw that into Total Warhammer, where, okay, yeah, I've lost like my whole front line collapse of like 15 clan rats, but that's okay because I managed to kill this, and that, because these things happen. Because that's the kind of mentality that the Skaven army has, is a lot of domino effect, or hey, I sacrificed this, you know, the Skaven high price for ultimate reward. So that was the Warfire Thrower. Here's the Rattling Gun. The multi-barreled whirling death-dealing machine, known as the Rattling Gun, is a relatively modern invention. Nonetheless, it is proven so successful that Clan Skryre simply cannot make enough to satisfy the greedy demands of the warlord clans. Powered by warp steam and kicked into gear by the prodigious working of a hand crank, the 6 barrels of the Rattling Gun spin and whir, emitting a fusillade of warp-laced bullets that streak through the air, leaving faint greenish traces. The Rattling Gun is more than capable of producing a true surplus of firepower, if such a thing were possible. A solid burst from a Rattling Gun is more than enough to scythe down a charging unit of Orc Boar Boys mid-gallop, and can even put down a dent into the largest unit of Clan Rat warriors, although this is often called accidental shooting. Clan Rats refer to units slain by the Rattling Gun as teeth breakers, as the flesh tends to be riddled with dozens of lumpy, glowing bullets. As is typical of Clan Skryre work, there are a number of different design patterns, including a wheeled variety, one with a small gun shield, a tripod-mounted version, and more besides. The foul device may come in many shapes and sizes, but all are equally deadly, and just as likely to malfunction or overheat as the next. Rumors of certain very wealthy warlord clans deploying entire units made of Rattling Gun weapon teams have never been substantiated, although perhaps that is because no one has survived to tell the tale. So it's kind of cool they call them teeth breakers, because Skaven eat the dead afterward, but as you can see right here, you know, like I said, just looks exactly like a Gatling gun. So it's cool to see these guys, like, even on the tabletop, it's just kind of cool to see them mixed into the units. Playing against Skaven's always kind of fun, too, because you never know how it's going to go. I mean, you've got your hard and soft counters, but it's always just kind of interesting. So let's jump into the Doomflayer here. The Doomflayer is a motorized iron ball of whirling blades that was first employed during the merciless underground battles against the dwarves of the World's Edge Mountains. Desperate to break through the shield walls of the bearded things, and unable to get within the range to deploy a Warpfire Thrower or Poisoned Wind Globadiers, an unknown Clan Skryre warlock engineer jury-rigged a heavily armored attack device. Built from scavenged scrap, broken blades, and the steam-powered roto-engine of a recently recovered crashed dwarf gyrocopter, the first destructive engine that was destined to evolve into the Doomflayer was born. Although the first rudimentary machines did not survive, the idea did. Various incarnations of the killing machine, with the spinning, stabbing, and slashing blades, began to assail the subterranean strong points of the dwarfs. The first crew Doomflayers were largely Skaven-powered, as the pushing crew generated much of the impetus to spin the belts and cogs that drove the whirling weaponry. The Skaven crew, protected by a scrap barrier of old shields and metal-reinforced planks, and even the patched-together armor plates of fallen enemies, could just about avoid incoming missile fire, and still steer the device to plow into enemy lines. To this rough concept, the Warlock engineers added the full verminous ingenuity of their wicked race. This, of course, meant that a warpstone generator provided the real power behind the swirling abattoir. Now, the death-dealing apparatus could crash into the foe with hellish vigor, lopping off limbs and scything down any who dared to stand before it. The great splashes of gore and entrails that this vice leaves behind it inspires the clan rats and storm vermin who advance in its carnage-filled wake. Although the infernal devices never achieved the sheer blood-soaked devastation it wrought in the continued tunnels of the underworld, the Doomflayer has proven its worth in several surface battles, notably shredding many Imperial soldiers in the tightly confined streets of Nuln during that short-lived but devastating invasion of the Man City. So, I didn't really talk about the last two, but I think the Rattling Gun will see armor piercing and anti-infantry. The Doomflayer, I think we'll see anti-infantry, maybe not so much armor piercing, and the flamethrower, basically, I think we'll see another. I don't think AP, but I just think anti-infantry in that as well. Maybe one of those will be anti-large too. And I'm not really sure if they're even going to include these, but I still think they're really, really fun units to know about, because really, if you're playing the Skaven, they just go hand in hand. They're so damn cool. So we'll jump over here to the Poisoned Wind Mortar, which, I mean, is as awesome as it sounds. Clan Skryre has long sought to build a device that can lob poisoned wind globes over a longer distance while still being able to advance quickly with the massed Skaven infantry. The Poisoned Wind Mortar was the answer. The muzzle-loading tube allows a weightier poisoned wind bomb to be fired to a range greater than a lone Globadier could hope to achieve. Additionally, with some hastily squealed directions from its parent unit, the Poisoned Wind Mortar can fire indirectly. Hurting the enemy without risking one's own hide is always an appealing idea to any Skaven. As the bulk of the firing apparatus can be strapped upon a crew member's back, the weapon team can advance alongside Skaven regiments, pausing momentarily to lob high-arcing shots into the distant foes, before scurrying to stay alongside its parent unit. So it'd be really awesome to see these guys as just a way to slow down advancing armies, like especially if you have like beastmen coming at you all hot and heavy, and they're fast in their attack. It'll be cool to see like maybe Poisoned Wind Mortars to just poison them and slow them down a bit, because these things are going to definitely have a blast radius on them that'll help kind of slow things down in a wide area. But as always, though, everything's got a misfire on all these things, so it's really interesting to see how this kind of plays out. And the last thing here is the warp grinder. To tunnel more quickly than typical slave labor, the Skaven deploy specially devised Clan Skryre machines. Some of the massive constructs are larger than the grandest ship of the Empire's navy. These huge devices combine great drills with warp energies to vaporize the broken debris as the machine bores. These rare machines are seldom, if ever, seen, but a portable version can often be found deployed on the battlefield. The warp grinder opens up tunnels. Projectors gleam with warp energy, pulverizing stone and leaving a narrow and smoking passageway in its wake. Small, fast-moving units can follow the device, emerging behind enemy lines to cause untold disruption. But it's a perilous trip, as the newly bored tunnels are prone to cave-ins and the machines can suffer catastrophic meltdowns. When the warp grinders break through the surface, it will stick with the unit that it is attached to, even assisting in close combat. Without the comforting presence of the parent unit, the weapon team will flee the battlefield. So, I don't know if this will be in the game. I think it'd be really cool, though, if it was specific only to sieges. Like if you went to go to siege and you had, your tower and your battering ram, but then you also had warp grinders if you were Skaven. Because Skaven aren't going to have a real effective way to break open walls in the early game, I would assume. And a warp grinder, I think, is a really cool way for them to kind of answer that, by allowing you to quite literally burrow under them. And I think that'd be really, really, really fucking cool. But that really rounds out the weapons teams and the core units, so that we've covered pretty much all of the base units of the Skaven, as well as their quote-unquote more elite units. But now we're going to get more into the specialized units for the Skaven, going into the special units, as you would assume. So we'll start off with the Warplock Jezzails. So the Warplock Jezzails are long-barreled rifles that require a 2 Skaven team to load and fire. Aided by its tremendous length, the Warplock Jezzail is capable of hitting targets at a distance greater than conventional bow or handgun fire. The Jezzail fires a high-velocity bullet made of refined warpstone. It strikes with a force capable of punching through a shield, breastplate, and body of an armored knight. Should the glowing green projectile pass through or embed itself in flesh, the damage can be considerable, due in part to the highly toxic nature of warpstone. Although moving too quickly to be seen, the bullets fired by a Warplock Jezzail leave behind a faint green streak. It is easy to trace the shots back to their source, ensuring any return missile fire that the enemy can muster will follow. For this reason, what started out as a mere aiming platform for the long rifle has turned into a protective this word always confused me how to pronounce it. Pavis, designed to shield the vulnerable Jezzail team from incoming arrows, bolts, and bullets. The Warplock Jezzail is unmistakably a weapon team. But unlike the other Clan Skryre portable weapons, the Warplock Jezzail do not individually support infantry, but instead form their own units. Warplock Jezzails are a valuable asset to any warlord who will try to position such a formation atop a hill, cliff, defile, or building to afford them the greatest possible line of sight. So we're definitely going to see an armor-piercing unit here, a long-range armor-piercing unit, probably with poison. Like, I wouldn't be surprised, or at least magic damage, because Warpstone is, in essence, a chaos magic, more or less. So I'm really interested to see how that looks, and even if they get that green trace after the fire. After each gun is fired, I'd really love to see that. That'd be so awesome. But I don't know if they'll play kind of like an artillery unit, because in the tabletop, you don't have like a whole unit of handgunners like you do with Empire handgunners. You have, I think it's like 6 in a unit for these guys, but they just punch through armor. They have like a really, really far range, and they have a -4 to something save, which is not very common in the tabletop universe. So I could see them having a very high AP, a very high, a very large range, magic and or poison damage, and again, maybe even like a bronze or silver shield, which would be very interesting to see in a ranged unit. But I'd love to really kind of see how that plays out. They're really, really cool. They're, as far as special units go, next to the Rat Ogres, they're like, and really the Gutter Runners, they're like my favorite looking special unit, because it's, as you can see here, it's a fucking mouse with a rifle in front of another mouse with a shield. It's adorable and terrifying, but adorably terrifying. But I really dig on them. A large bit of the actual what's this place called? The special slot in the Skaven army is actually taken up by a lot of Clan Pestilens. And we'll see that here in the Plague Monks and the Plague Censors and the Poisoned Wind Globadiers I'm about to jump into right now. But we'll start off with the Plague Monks because they're kind of like the base portion of the what's this thing called? The Clan Pestilens. But we'll start off with them right now. The Plague Monks of Clan Pestilens are zealots, zealots utterly dedicated to the spread of corruption and decay in the name of the Great Horned One. These devout disciples of disease are unique amongst Skaven society in that they are fanatically committed to their clan and its purpose of creating the ultimate disease. Once this plague devastates all surface dwellers, the Skaven can rise up in the ruins and claim their proper inheritance, nothing short of the entirety of the world. The Great Horned Rat will know who brought his children to their rightful and preordained ascendancy, and Clan Pestilens will sit over all and rule supreme. To all reasonable creatures, and even other Skaven, the Plague Monks are a horror to the senses. Plague Monks are instantly recognizable by their disheveled robes, soiled shrouds which partially cover the weeping sores, bony growths, and fluid-filled blisters that mark their scarred flesh. The thick cowls and rotting bandages cannot hide the sickeningly sweet smell of purification, which seems to hover visibly in the air, and it is this stench that attracts the swarms of buzzing flies that accompany the loathsome acolytes. When Plague Monks gather, their squeaky chanting can be heard as they recite from the foul book of woe, endlessly repeating the liturgus infectious, or the rites of infection. If they are going to war, the Plague Monks march under one of their Clan Pestilens banners, often a half-rotted carcass hanging from a banner pole, bearing unimaginably twisted visions rendered in pigments distilled from blood and warpstone. As the foul brethren march forwards towards an enemy battle line, their chanting picks up in its pace, and the Plague Monks seem to incite themselves into a terrible rage. In combat, Plague Monks hurl themselves into the fray with fanatical ferocity, eager to bring death and destruction to their foes. With bulging eyes and foaming mouths, the Plague Monks seem possessed of an unnatural and unholy fervor. They relentlessly attack with filth-encrusted blades, iron-tipped staves, or even their needle-sharp teeth. A Plague Monk's exposure to pestilence has rendered its toughened, boil-hardened skin immune to pain. The ability to shrug off crippling injury, combining with their near-hysterical zealotism, means that the only reliable way of stopping a plague monk's attack is to wholly dismember the disease-ridden Skaven. So I definitely think we're going to see basically like a copy of Flagellants in these guys. They have in the book, it says Frenzy. So it's definitely going to be a unit in Warhammer Total War that is going to have Frenzy as well. And I'm really curious to see if they'll be kind of the low armor, high attack of Flagellants, or if they'll have a little more staying power because of their natural high toughness and the fact that they're riddled with plague and already kind of dead from the inside out. But we shall see how that goes. Because we were talking about the Plague Priests earlier in the Lords and Heroes, so the Plague Priests obviously rule over the Plague Monks. Then within the Plague Monks, though, you've got the Plague Censer Bearers. And let's jump into these guys here. Only the most insanely devoted of the Plague Monks are given the honor of wielding a Plague Censer, the deadliest weapon in the clan Pestilens armory. A Plague Censer is a hollow spiked metal ball attached to a length of chain. In an unholy ritual, a Plague Priest reads aloud disturbing and disease-ridden passages from the Book of Woe, while a shard of warpstone is placed inside the cruelly spiked globe. A ladle's worth of vile contagions is added, poured over the warpstone itself. Hellish runes glow as the devil's concoction immediately begins a slow bubble, sending tendrils of greenish vapors wafting out from the many holes in the ornate iron orb. Contact with the haze of noxious fumes emitted from a gently swaying censer will cause flesh to erupt into sores and fluid-filled blisters. When swung in the heat of battle, however, the censer emits vast billowing green clouds. Exposure to the plague fog causes horrific damage as lungs instantly fill with virulent fluid and vital organs putrefy. It would take a creature absolutely devoid of common sense to be anywhere near such a weapon, much less wielded in battle. Enter the Plague Censer Bearers. The image of the Censer Bearers rhythmically swinging their plague-filled weapons at the forefront of an oncoming Skaven army is the very stuff of nightmares. A plague chanter, the unholy acolyte of a plague priest, zealously leads the unit of plague censer bearers. The baleful fumes of the censers seem to fill the demented brethren with unnatural rage. As they near the enemy battle line, the foaming and fanatical plague censer bearers increase the arc of their swings, leaving contrails and encircling rings as they dash towards the foe. Reckless and fully deranged, the Plague Censer Bearers often fall victim to their own weapons, inhaling a final lungful of pollution or even impaling themselves with their own ball and chain. It matters not. Fueled by their own mind-warping fog, their ecstatic rat minds are only focused on the duty at hand, to unleash their fury and maul their hated foes. So we might see something kind of akin to the Night Goblins and their fanatics in these guys as well, because they have got Frenzy and they've got the Skirmish special rule too. So maybe they come from a unit of Plague Monks, who knows? But the Plague Censer itself is pretty crazy because, as you kind of heard, it attacks everything around it. So I'm curious to see if they're going to make it have maybe poison attacks as well, and maybe cause some sort of status effect like a fear or a terror, but it negates a lot of the defenses of other models in the tabletop. So I'm curious to see what they do with this, because the plague monks and whatnot, they don't suffer as much damage as other models. So maybe the tactic with these guys is to get them popped in next to plague monks or plague priests or Lord Scroll, who we will talk about soon, and the catapults. But I'm really curious to see how they use these guys, because they've got to use them. They're so cool. They're the plague monks that we just spoke about, and like their bandages and their robes, but with these gigantic maces, as you see from these pictures here. So they're really standout units with these glowing green balefire type maces that are just swanging them left and right, you know. But again, I'm really interested to see how they incorporate these bad boys. But let's jump over here to the last guy in the plague or clan Pestilens realm here, with the Poisoned Wind Globadiers, and always been like a pretty iconic unit for the Skaven. Like, if you've seen these guys once or twice, just knowing tabletop stuff, you're like, oh yeah, these guys, Skaven, got it. But again, Poisoned Wind Globadiers. Poison gas is one of the most infamous weapons of the Warlock engineers, who first deployed the noxious gas during the bitter tunnel fighting against the dwarfs of the World's Edge Mountains. So, real quick jumping in, we see a lot of this stuff developing as a result of fighting with the dwarves, like what was it called? Not the Doom Wheel, but the that other giant monstrosity in the weapons teams, that what's it called? The Doom Flayer. So it's interesting to just kind of see how a lot of the origins of these special weapons or even special units comes from these war with these dwarves. But again, sorry. Bitter tunnel fighting against the dwarfs of the World's Edge Mountains. Clan Skryre was delighted at this new diabolical way to slaughter their foes. The engineers have tried many methods of delivery. Machines of incredulous complexity and dubious worth have been attempted, but in the end, the best method of launching gas attacks into the enemy's ranks had been via the especially trained Globadiers. Poisoned wind globes are glass or crystal orbs filled with deadly warpstone gas. When thrown, the sphere shatters, releasing billowing clouds so lethal that mere skin contact can cause severe pain or even death. Breathing the vapors causes lungs to spontaneously fill with bubbling pus, a horrible and nearly instantaneous death. For this reason, Globadiers wear all manner of elaborate masks, goggles, and cumbersome rebreathing apparatus in an effort to protect themselves against accidental gassing. Armor offers no protection against poison gas, but this does not stop the Globadiers from wearing arcane body armor beneath their robes. On the battlefield, small regiments of Poisoned Wind Globadiers lurk between formations of clan rats or storm vermin. At times, Globadiers are accompanied by a Poisoned Wind mortar to boost the unit's firepower. From the relative safety of the shadow of the large regiments, the Globadiers wait for the opportunities to dart forward and lob their deadly missiles. The horrible way in which their weapons work make Poisoned Wind Globadiers priority targets to enemies that have faced such dangers before. Globadiers have no qualms about lobbing their missiles into a swirling melee, displaying a general disregard as to whether their globes strike friendly troops or of the enemy. It is not unusual for Globadiers to survive a battle only to be attacked by friendly formations that have suffered from their errant globes. So we'll probably see a unit that kind of plays like the miners with charges, and that they're going to be chucking these over the heads of their own units. And the difference will be, of course, that they'll be chucking them without regard of the fact that their own units are engaged. So it'd be really, really awesome to see this go through, just to kind of these little globes just detonating across the front line, killing both enemy and ally alike. So again, as you can see, a lot of these mechanics and a lot of these units are very fun, or very random, and very unpredictable. And that's the kind of cool thing about Skaven is it's not a conventional battle line. It's not a conventional attack. It has a really fun way of just kind of manifesting itself, which I really, really dig on. But we're down to the last two guys here in the special category. We had brought them up with the Night Runners, but the bigger badasses of the Night Runners are the Gutter Runners. And these guys are something special. So let's go in here to the Gutter Runners themselves. Most suspicious deaths and acts of espionage in Skaven society are blamed on the nefarious clan Eshin. Such accusations are probably true, but of course, there is no evidence. Much of this devastation is wrought by the Gutter Runners, clan Eshin's black-clad death squads. Gutter Runners have undergone training in the mysterious fighting style developed in the Far East. Because of their ability to bend and contort their pliable bodies with a speed and dexterity unachievable by men, Gutter Runners have no need for encumbering armor. They simply dodge the blows and missiles of their foes. A unit is often led by a Death Runner, the term used for the most promising assassin adept. Gutter Runners are used to soften up enemy armies before a battle begins. Night raids, arson attacks, and contaminated water supplies are all favorite covert tactics of these stealth troops. On the battlefield, Gutter Runners are often tasked with the elimination of enemy war machines, ambushing exposed flanks, or picking off vulnerable units. The Gutter Runners use a variety of weapons and poisons to accomplish their missions, but it is their ability to appear out of nowhere that makes them so formidable. They are masters of stealth and can nimbly creep up on even the wariest of opponents. On occasion, Gutter Runners will use a warp grinder weapon team so they can surface in the center of an enemy's battle line to cause maximum disruption. In addition to hiring themselves out to perform sinister deeds for the warlord clans, gutter runners work on behalf of the Council of 13. Across the globe, furtive bands of gutter runners spy, instigate warfare between surface dwellers, and commit acts of sabotage. Under the orders of the clan Lords of Decay, gutter runners have stolen or destroyed the recorded history of Skaven attacks from the great libraries of the Empire, searched for ways to penetrate the emerald gates of Ulthuan, and sought out the locations of all the remaining descendants of the dreaded von Karstein vampires. An unprecedented amount of secret knowledge flows into Skaven Blight, as the Council of 13 mulls over each report, forever seeking to stay one step ahead of their many foes. So, you have really a more elite unit of night runners in these guys, but I think what the really cool thing about these is that we're going to get like a scouting unit that can skirmish, so we'll be able to do a vanguard placement. They're going to have anti-infantry and AP. They have a cool ability called Snare Net though, and I'd be curious to see if that makes it into the game, because they kind of count as shields for them, but excuse me, they could probably be used to, like, okay, I want to use my gutter runners, which have probably an innate stock ability, get them close to an enemy lord, and use snare nets, which I don't think would actually snare the movement. I think it would snare the attack ability, or maybe increase the amount of weapon damage coming into the unit, something like that. Some sort of debuff for a target, or maybe something that you could use to quickly route or slice up a weapon crew or something of the sort. So gutter runners are definitely going to be one of those, probably one unit of gutter runners in every multiplayer game to deal with the backline when they least expect it. But I'm really curious to see how they work, because I just like the way the units look. I mean, as you can see from these guys, it's just they're nothing too crazy or exciting to write home about, but it's just kind of nice. It's just kind of cool to me to see like little Skaven assassin guys, like, again, just little chitter chattering dudes just kind of sneaking up behind your line, stabbing you in the butthole and leaving, or maybe not. But you know, I'm not a Skaven. I don't know if you stab a butthole. I don't know how that really works. I'm not sure on the logistics of how to be an assassin. But we'll round off the special units here with the Rat Ogres, which are really just like the come at me bros of the Warhammer world, because like if the Hulk was a rat, it'd be a Rat Ogre. I mean, these guys are pretty massive. So here's Rat Ogres. The hulking monstrosities known as Rat Ogres are one of the most successful of Clan Moulder's numberless creations. The Master Moulders have found the perfect blend of death-dealing creature through a mixture of foul crossbreeding and dark sorcerer's surgery. In their artificial making, many beasts are literally stitched together, the impossible feat accomplished through the fusing powers of a powerful warpstone-derived balm and the infamous Scalm. The Rat Ogre combines the speed and ferocity of a Skaven with the sheer brawn of an ogre. Somehow, the desperate hunger of both races has been magnified as well, for the Rat Ogre is truly a ravenous creature, forever seeking to gorge its fill on fresh meat. In battle, a Rat Ogre pack is horrifying to behold. The Rat Ogres become wholly consumed by an insatiable instinct to kill, rip, and tear, and it takes the packmasters to steer their ferocious charges. A Rat Ogre pack moves with great speed, their misshapen bodies made entirely of straining, bulging muscles, teeth, and claws. The snarling rage of a Rat Ogre pack colliding with an enemy unit resounds across the battlefield as the towering creatures splinter shields, snap bones, and relentlessly pound any and all opposition. A Rat Ogre is incapable of almost anything except killing and warfare. After battle, their packmasters must move quickly to carefully separate and chain each near-mindless brute to keep it from tearing others or even itself asunder. All Rat Ogres bear upon their tortured bodies countless scars, not only from their own artificial making, but also numerous battles, the packmaster's cruel lash, the savage attentions of the rest of the pack, and most certainly of all, signs of their own self-destruction. At the height of their rabid fury, Rat Ogres are known to rip and even devour hunks of their own flesh, as if they seek to tear apart what Clan Moulder has so unnaturally stitched together. So it's really cool fucking unit, these guys. They've got fear, they've got frenzy, so I'm really interested to see if they add the packmasters in them to kind of keep them on point, or if that would just kind of be a wasted mechanic in the game. I'm not sure. But I'm really excited to see these guys as like the monstrous unit for Skaven, because they're just going to be hulking dudes, just kind of like the crypt horrors, and how the crypt horrors just linebacker into the middle of like every single unit. The rat ogres are going to be bigger than those guys, and just like tiny heads, big bodies. It's like every time you go to the Jersey Shore, you know, just like, oh yo, touch my abs. But I'm really stoked on these guys because they're going to be really, 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 really cool. But that really rounds off the special units here. Next, we'll jump into some of the crazier units of the Skaven, and these are really actually, they're war machines, so it'll be fun to kind of foray into this. The rare choices here for the Skaven army, and consequently the last region, and by region I do mean section, before getting into the what I think the special characters are going to be in Total Warhammer 2. I've got 3 that I think might be our legendary lords that we get to spank around with. I'm going to use that term. It's going to be probably 2 of these 3. There's way more, but these are my top picks as it is. But I'm, again, getting ahead of myself as usual. Let me just crank out this sucker on the Doom wheel. So again, like I was saying, we're going to be looking at a lot of artillery pieces or war machines with the rare section here, or actually, like, you know, kind of like the Mortis engine or the pimp mobile and the Empire side. We're going to see things kind of like that. We'll get there as we go through this, but let's start off with the Doom wheel, which is actually a lot of people's favorite war machine of the Skaven. It's really awesome, and as you see from these pictures coming up, it's pretty. It makes a pretty big lasting impression here. So, few devices sum up the blend of science and sorcery, the sheer inhumane ingenuity of the Skaven, than the infernal war engine known as the Doom Wheel. At first sight, the Doom Wheel might seem an oddity, perhaps even comical to opponents that have not faced one before. The dwarfs who have suffered many wars against the Skaven know full well the Doom Wheel's measure, and will direct every war machine at their disposal to blast the deadly war wheel apart before it can churn close enough to pulverize the dwarf battle lines. Indeed, dwarf cannons will allow themselves to be overrun by the foe, willingly sacrificing themselves for their hold in order to get off a single shot at the infernal Skaven device. The Doom Wheel was invented by perhaps the most insanely talented of all warlock engineers, Ikit Claw. The design is so simple and yet so complex, so utterly Skaven in its inception, that it is well beyond the ken of even the top minds of the Imperial School of Engineers in Nuln to comprehend. Rats scampering in twin treadmills inside an enormous wheel provide the primary mode of power. This, in turn, sparks the warpstone generator, which, if all goes well, powers bolts of lethal warp lightning. If the green or purplish bolts that arc out from the warp conduits do not slay the foe, then it will be up to the great iron-reinforced wheel to crush all who dare to stand before its creaking but mighty track. At the center of the contraption sits a warlock engineer who pilots the mad creation. Sitting inside the mighty death-dealing artifice of destruction puffs the warlock engineer, so full of bold reassurance that the otherwise dubious courage of his race is at least partially offset. Doubtlessly, the wafting fumes from the warpstone's generator bolster the engineer's confidence as well. Of course, there are still teething problems that make the Doom Wheel dangerously haphazard. These sorts of petty concerns, however, do not overly worry the warlock engineers. On the whole, they would rather be cobbling together a brand new type of killing machine than fine-tuning one that more or less works most of the time. That's kind of like that 60% of the time works every time. For instance, the rat propulsion system of the Doom Wheel might, on occasion, produce results that are between disappointing and deeply lethargic. To a warlock engineer whose mind thinks in gears and cogs combined with eldritch incarnations, such flaws are exacerbating. Despite being fed stimulants and bathed in the unnatural glow of raw warpstone, the rats seem incapable of reliable service. An engineer will quickly conclude the problem is just the beasts being willful. When it works correctly, the Doom Wheel whirs quickly across the battlefield, moving more swiftly than galloping horses. If it is going exceptionally well, the warlock engineer will even steer the great wheel toward the enemy. This is ideal, as the powerful warp lightning bolts fire out, blasting the nearest thing to shriveled blackness, so it's best to be nearer the foe. The warlock engineer who pilots the doom wheel has much to attend to, chiefly ensuring that the warpstone generator isn't overloading or goading the rat propulsion via shock prod. Sometimes steering is one of the duties that does not take priority. It is not unusual to see one of the enormous wheels plowing back into its own lines, but random, cruel, and undeserved death is not something new for Skaven. The power to break enemy battle lines or destroy large monsters more than compensates for the odd squashed clan rat or Skaven slave. Still, wise commanders deploy doom wheels as far away from themselves as is possible. So, you see in the doom wheel, it is everything that encompasses the Skaven army. It is random, it is crazy, it is slightly terrifying, but it could go horribly wrong or horribly well, you know. And that's the kind of cool thing about it, is that it causes terror. It just slams through things. It'll probably be anti-large and armor-piercing, methinks, or actually probably magic attacks, because that's kind of the crux of this, is that it just can literally grind down everything. And that's kind of the cool thing about it, is that it's like a hard counter to all things, and in and of itself is a hard counter to itself, because it could just plow through your own units. It can fuck itself up pretty badly. Just like everything else with Skaven, it has its own misfire chart. So, you know, it can get a massive boost of speed, it can have a disaster and suffer a hit to itself, or it can just be out of control and move random directions. So, again, that's the kind of randomness you get with this army, and eclecticness, but also the kind of fun flavor you get with the army, which is going to be really cool to see how this thing plays out in the Total Warhammer world, because it'll be very different than anything we've encountered so far in this universe. I mean, you can kind of look at some of the greenskin stuff as somewhat comparable, but this thing is just in a league of its own. And it did mention Ikit Claw, who is basically the almost said Warplock engineer, but Warlock engineer, special character for the Skaven. And one of the big things is, like, people say, like, he wore power armor before power armor was cool, because he's covered in like this ornate special crazy clan Skryre armor, which is pretty nifty. But we'll move on here to the Hell Pit Abomination, and I'll just read the flavor text, because I almost again got ahead of myself here. So at Hell Pit, the quest to create a beast of monstrous proportions was going poorly. Cavern laboratories were wrecked, vats of mutating agents smashed, legions of Skaven slaves were lost in hideous fashion. As Lord Verminkin, the leader of Clan Moulder, directed the works himself, the repercussions for such failures were bloody and ongoing. It was then that Throt the Unclean returned from his creature-capturing foray into the wastes. The procession was not of manacled slaves, but instead many creaking wagons, which between them bore a single chained beast. At long last, one of the paladin deep tunneling blind verms that exist in the depths of the world had been caught. It was not easy force-feeding such a creature warpstone until the swollen mutating beast could be cut and grafted. Keeping the blind verm alive during the complicated operations proved difficult, and several times the great writhing creature had to be resuscitated with jolts of warp lightning. There were many experiments, but only Rat Ogre components had the strength to bond. Other attachments withered or died. So much warpstone was used in the stitching together process that production of other beasts of war fell to nothing. Suspecting plots against their clans, many warlords began to clamor, sure that treachery was afoot. Ominous signs preceded the final creation of what has come to be known as the Hell Pit Abomination. Mori's lead was low, the winds of magic blew strongly, and storms of impossible proportions raged at the torture-racked polar caps. The warp lightning accumulators that rose above the surface of Hell Pit whirred with supernatural power as they delivered the final jolt that shocked the now completed creation alive. The beast rampaged through Hell Pit, slaying Skaven by the hundreds. It was a great success. Throt, rewarded with new breeders, was promised caverns in the innermost circle of the labyrinth that is Hell Pit, if he would hunt down more of the invaluable blind verms. Lord Verminkin decreed that more of the creatures must be made immediately. The Hell Pit Abomination is a living mountain of misshapen flesh. The creature moves in a rippling tide of unnatural spasms, writhing worm-like and using its many limbs to pull and drag its hideous bulk forward. Various mechanical bits, such as wheels, cogs, and fluid pumps, have been grafted into the beast to ensure it moves at optimal speed, and that the warpstone mutated growth agents are regularly injected into the beast's hyper-fast metabolism. A multitude of heads dart out of the lumpen mound of muscle and bone at the behemoth's fore. The heads that snake out are all vermin-like, but some glisten hairlessly, like unborn rat monstrosities. Many have eyes, but no few are blind, twisting and craning to catch the scent of prey, hissing and snapping at the air with razor-sharp incisors. Many foes will flee from the unnatural sight of a Hell Pit Abomination. With a horrifying slither and shamble, the creature propels itself across the battlefield, rearing up to a towering height before it hits the enemy line like a thunderbolt. Vast boulder-sized fists smash aside shield walls and send foes flying, while hungry jaws snap and greedily devour the broken victims. Once in combat, the Hell Pit Abomination is relentless, dragging its bulk onwards to crush any in its wake. Hell Pit Abominations are notoriously hard to slay, and there are accounts of the beasts visibly healing wounds, regrowing severed limbs, and rising from the dead to attack again. So these things are just really, really, really cool. They cause terror. They're stubborn, so that means they're probably going to be unbreakable if it translates directly. And they have the ability to regenerate, and they have another cool ability called Too Horrible to Die, meaning that they actually can come back to life on a certain die roll. So I'd be really interested to see them make that transition into Total War Warhammer. They didn't do it with the trolls. The Chaos Trolls and Trolls don't really have the regenerating capabilities like they do in the tabletop. They might have a minor HP regen that I'm not really aware of that is, again, minor and not really kind of game-breaking. But these things are basically supposed to either die outright, or they explode and a bunch of rats come out of them, or they just come back to life. So it'll be really nifty to see them kind of roll that out in this. And they're huge. They're gigantic. They're like bigger than Terrorgeists big. And it'll be cool to have them in the game with... the High Elves are probably going to be having their Phoenixes and their Dragons and their Griffins. And the Dark Elves will have their Dark Dragons, and they'll have their Manticores. And then you've got the Lizard Men with their Stegodons and their... Carnosaurs. So it'll be awesome to see this big. These things are huge. Look at this fucking picture. This thing is ugly. These hulking big uglies just slammering across the battlefield, just probably like oozing snail ooze like they probably do. They don't, but I'm just saying it'd be cool, I think, or some sort of slick shit. But they're really, really, really awesome, and they're relatively new to Skaven. They weren't always in here that I remember, or at least I don't remember a model this badass when I was first like collecting Skaven. But they definitely kind of outdid themselves with this guy, because he is quite the number. But now we're gonna jump into the last two of the rare choices for Skaven, and both of them kind of being a little more conventional as far as war machines go, to kind of stack up against some of the already existing war machines in the Warhammer world, because we'll see war machines in Dark Elves and High Elves, so it only makes sense that they would have an answer for those. So we'll start off with the Plague Claw Catapult. Since their rise to power, Clan Pestilens has been hard at work creating new strains of disease. The bubbling vats filled with carcasses, warpstone, and foetid offal are forever brewing vile concoctions, while failing, as of yet, to create the ultimate contagion to rid the world of all surface dwellers. The Plague Monks have discovered their pestilent byproducts make worthy weapons on their own. The unbalanced blend of poisons, chanted magics, and disease-soaked corpses make a liquid that can kill on contact. Over the centuries, many have suffered the wrath of the foul creations of Clan Pestilens. Rival clans have been destroyed outright as befilthed wastewater has been pumped in to flood enemy caves and warrens. It was in the Southlands that crude Terosian devices first began hurling loathsome substances onto the foe during battle. The Plague Monks learned to deliver their pestilent payloads via catapult, the erupting splatter of deadly contents, slaying targets in a toxic storm. Those splashed by the semi-congealed liquid find their skin simultaneously sloughing off in ruin and elsewhere erupting in glistening sores. Armor offers no protection against such a loathsome weaponry. After the reconciliation following the Second Civil War, Clan Pestilens received technical help from the warlock engineers of Clan Skryre. Soon the crude war engines built by the Plague Monks were replaced with what are now known as Plague Claw catapults. Great wheeled scaffold towers bearing catapults. Pushed into position by ragged clan pestilent acolytes, the claw-like arm of a Plague Claw catapult is winched back and unleashed to lob hideous death. The toxic semi-liquid leaves a glowing streak across the sky as it arcs earthwards. It'll be really awesome to see these guys because, you know, we've got rock lobbers and the such with dwarves and with greenskins. But it'll just be cool to see this different mechanic of having it probably be poisoned. I'm expecting a lot of poison to come in with Skaven because a lot of their stuff, as you can see, is from Clan Pestilens or is poison based. So they're naturally very fast. They'll probably have a very fast movement speed on all their infantry. So with that poison in conjunction, it'll probably help them get around units or secure flanking charges or even deny flanks. So it'll be very interesting to see how this poison plays into Total War Warhammer and how these Plague Claw catapults really kind of fire off. No pun intended. But a recent trend that they had done with Games Workshop models, especially some of their cavalry units or some of their what are we just talking about here? Artillery pieces and whatnot. They came in like a double kit. You'd buy one box and you could make either the Plague Claw catapult or the Warp Lightning Cannon. And you'll see from these two pictures that they're pretty much, they have the same base of a unit, but the different parts on top that make it obviously what it is. But the Warp Lightning Cannon is my favorite of the actual rare selections because it's just really. I had one before. They've changed the way they look. They used to have just like this big bulbous ass and a big huge cannon on really small little wheels. They're just kind of really nifty looking, really very what's that word I'm looking for? Steampunk-esque. And now they're still pretty damn cool, but they're still top artillery piece in the Warhammer world for me. But they've changed a little bit, you know. People change. Warp Lightning cannons, they change and shit. But here's a little bit on them. The Warp Lightning Cannon is a contraption built by the fiendishly clever Warlock engineers and powered by an enormous hunk of raw warpstone. This wonder weapon generates unearthly energy, which is directed along a rune-etched barrel forged and enchanted to channel such destructive fury. When fired, the Warp Lightning Cannon emits a sizzling ball of warp energy, and any near the shot are rocked in its wake, first standing on end and with a sickly green light burnt into their mind's eye. The bolt arcs earthwards, punching through anything in its path, and then erupts in a crackling cloud of pure warp lightning. The shot flashes too quickly to follow, but its trail, once it lands on the ground, is easily marked. Scorched signs follow its path, and anything in its way will have a gaping hole in the exact shape of the beam. At first glance, this puncture is impossibly clean-cut, but closer inspection reveals warp engines eating outward from the circle, destroying all matter in the way fire blackens and crumbles paper. So I think with this cannon we'll see something similar to the the sun ray from Empire. Something that it's probably going to miss a lot, but when it does hit, it's just going to do a crap ton of armor piercing damage. It's just going to bore through units. So I'm really excited to see this guy in the tabletop because it'll probably have a really, really awesome firing animation, just like the Empire ones. Like got a bunch of like yellow crackling energy. This thing will have a bunch of like lightning energy too, and before shooting this big green, blue, destructive beam of death. But again, very interested to see how this plays out. And with that we actually round up the rare choices for the Skaven. There's not a whole ton to choose from, but as you can see, they're all very different and diverse in their own way. And with that, we'll kind of round this video itself off with talking about the legendary lords. We'll start off with who I think will be for sure in the game, because he's the most iconic well, I'd say one of the most iconic legendary lords of the Skaven army, who is Thanquol and Bone Ripper. I hope they include Bone Ripper with him, just like Skarsnik gets his little fucking horned pimple. But Thanquol and Bone Ripper. Thanquol is a Greyseer of great distinction, a particularly favored agent of the Council of 13. Over missions beyond counting, Thanquol has commanded armies, sought information or artifacts, supported furtive clan Eshin activities, and attempted to fan insurrection amongst the enemies of the Skaven. Ambitious and self-serving, even by Skaven standards, Thanquol misses no opportunity to use his scheming guile to improve his own standing. He is a master at manipulating or misunderstanding orders to his own personal advantage. Thanquol is shrewd and constantly reevaluates his plans, always probing for different angles or new benefits to be gained. That so many of his assignments go so disastrously wrong is not, as he so often assured the council, anything like his fault. Over time, Thanquol has sustained his frantic pace and powerful magics through the copious use of warpstone. The vivid, if twisted visions that race through Thanquol's warp-addled mind have given the Greyseer more than usual insight. This sixth sense has caused Thanquol to alter plans at the last minute, or urged him to jump twitchily for no tangible reason. Although erratic, this sudden instinct has saved Thanquol's life on more than one occasion. However, the misfortunes, or well-aimed shots, that Thanquol avoids invariably strike down someone nearby. Perhaps this is why the other Skaven fear Thanquol so much. All Greyseers have a particular field of expertise, and Thanquol has chosen to study humans. From Tilia to northern boundaries of the Empire, Thanquol has an extensive knowledge of the man-things, languages, and history, and has spent much time seeking the best ways to manipulate such creatures. Thanquol has had much success corrupting and bribing many individuals, building a nefarious network of informers and agents in many of the major human cities. Of late, Thanquol's devious plans have encountered a series of setbacks, although by the blessing of the Horned Rat, even these calamities seem to fall in favor of the Greyseer. In the year 2499, Thanquol gave the order to attack the human city of Nuln. Half the city was destroyed, along with the entire warlord clan assigned to execute his military plan. That clan's scab had been a threat to the Council of 13 was unbeknownst to Thanquol at the time. But the cunning Greyseer quickly claimed credit and exploited the situation to his advantage. What most Skaven remember is that Thanquol smashed a treacherous clan, and not that he failed in his main mission with severe losses. Thanquol has almost stolen secret plans, almost collapsed dwarf holes, almost started civil wars, and almost succeeded any number of times. Behind the failure of many of Thanquol's schemes have been two notorious figures: the mighty dwarf slayer Grotrek Gurnison and his human companion Felix Jaeger. It is only a matter of time before Thanquol's superior genius devises a method cruel enough to avenge the indignities suffered at the hands of those fools. In recognition of his, somewhat modified, successes, Thanquol has been given a gift by the Council of 13, a mutant rat ogre bodyguard. Over the years, Thanquol has not been lucky with bodyguards, losing many in a variety of horrible ways. Each time a rat ogre is lost, it is replaced thanks to the rebuilding and regrowing efforts of Clan Skryre and Clan Moulder. Several times, the new version of his bodyguard has even used the remaining material of the deceased beast to work with. Regardless, the new improved Rat Ogre is traditionally named Bone Ripper. With this sturdy, if mindless help, and his own twitchy yet invaluable paranoia, Thanquol once again seeks to serve the Lords of Decay, and himself, of course, to the best of his abilities. So, Thanquol's really, really cool because a lot of what you read with these Skaven is like, they're kind of like drug addicts. They're all like addicted to warpstone in one way or another. Like, gotta get that hit, man. Yeah. Like, I mean, I picture them all just kind of scratching their necks, twitching, and just tweaked out the whole entire time. But he has so many special rules, and he has Bone Ripper, who is awesome in and of himself, because Bone Ripper is like, you obviously have the Thanquol, who can choose spells from the Skaven spells of Ruin or Plague in any combination, which is great, because he can choose to substitute any one of his spells for the dreaded 13th spell. So he has a lot of access to a lot of different spells in the Skaven arsenal, Because like I was saying, they don't get access to the normal lords. They get their own lords, which is cool in its own right, because I think that's going to add just a whole different dynamic to the game. But, again, always getting ahead of myself here. He has all these great little special rules that I think are just going to make him so awesome as a legendary lord. And he's got so many magic items, like his warp amulet, or a staff of the horned rat, or warpstone tokens. So it'll be interesting to see those come into play, or if he gets Bone Ripper as maybe like a rank 15 unlock, who the Bone Ripper in and of himself has got fear and he's unbreakable, and he's just a monster of an actual close combat unit to kind of help defend Thankful, who is not as strong, obviously, in close combat. So, and he himself, Bone Ripper, is like riddled with like weapons and such on him. Like he's got like a warp fire thrower, so he is armed to the teeth too. So it'll be very interesting, and it'll play into that whole randomness dynamic that I was talking about that you get with the Skaven, in the sense that they're so unpredictable and they're just not like anything else. But that kind of brings us into Lord Skrolk, who I had distantly mentioned earlier in the video. But Lord Skrolk is he's another possible candidate here for legendary lord. He would be a wizard just like Thankful will. Thankful is obviously, like I was saying, a wizard, but Lord Skrolk would be an alternative to Thankful if they didn't want to include the whole Bone Ripper dynamic, and maybe if they wanted to hold him off for a DLC or something like that. And it's important to note that the Skaven have, just like they have a ton of different units and a ton of variety, they have a shit ton of special characters, whole ton. 8th edition really saw a lot of those special characters kind of go the way of the dinosaur, and they kept it to like a 3 or 4 core. I think the Skaven have like 6 or 7. I can't even. Let me see here. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They have 8 special characters, which is way above the norm for 8th edition Warhammer Fantasy. But here's a little bit about Lord Skrolk here. That Lord Skrolk walks the world is an affront to nature and a sign of the power of the great horned rat. Plants wither and die where Skrolk treads, and the very air about him seems to congeal and darken, as if stained by his baleful presence. Skrolk is ancient, having existed many spans of even the most long-lived of his foul kind. Rather than weakening with age, Lord Skrolk is possessed with a diabolic vitality that belies the years and the heaped diseases he carries. Indeed, Skrolk is bent and gnarled under the weight of countless corruptions. The flesh that is not hidden by his tattered shroud is leathery, covered in a layer of dripping babos. Even worse, the mysterious hunching growths framed by the robes promise something still more virulent. Each new pox only toughens the aged plague monk, who has himself become a disease that walks. Lord Skrolk is one of the plague lords, the rulers of Clan Pestilens, under the direct command of the arch plague lord Nurglich, who is 10th on the council. It was the sight of the radiant corruption of the arch plague lord that caused Skrolk to claw out his own eyes, as he wished to see no other vision to obscure the last glimpse of perfection. But the horned rat provides. Despite empty sockets, Skrolk moves assuredly and claims a magical sight that sees in vivid hues of decay. Despite his seeming blindness, Skrolk's reflexes are amazing. He can snatch a fly out of the air, or rather, he could if any flies were able to enter the aura that emanates from his loathsome hide. Insects literally drop dead from the noxious fumes surrounding Skrolk, and only extreme devotees can abide his presence. In battle, Lord Skrolk leads from the front, so he can unleash his rabid fury. He bears the Rod of Corruption, a dreadful staff of spiderwood, iron-capped with spikes and covered in writhing runes of power. Many censers hang from his chains, wafting foul vapors. Lord Skrolk often carries plague scriptures with him, and on occasion will bear one of the sacred volumes of the Liber Bubonicus, the toxic tomb of ultimate disease. So, Skrolk is a very old model. I mean, I think he's looked like this for years and years. And it's cool because he's kind of just like plague monks and the censer bearers. So he's got frenzy, but he also causes terror, and he's got this big aura of pestilence about him. So it's more unlikely for things to hit him. People are coughing up their lungs around him, trying to like actually hold on to their weapons. That's the kind of like image that creates. So it'd be interesting to see if he has a minus attack or minus leadership aura about him at all times, in conjunction with his terror. And he's got a magic weapon in the Rod of Corruption. But if Clan Pestilens is as primary the focus of the Skaven in Lustria, then it would make a lot of sense for Lord Skrulk to be one of the legendary lords as far as the caster lord for Total Warhammer 2, or Total War Warhammer 2. But we've touched on 2 of the caster lords. I think that we'll go to the third one, who I think will be in here because he's a very conventional warrior lord. He's a warlord. He's not, because there's an assassin lord, and there's an engineer lord, and there's more plague monks lord. There's a clan Moulder lord. I'm sorry, special characters. These are all special characters I'm talking about here. But I think that Queek Headtaker will be the other lord we'll get, and he's got a really cool model that we'll see here in a second. But here's a little bit on Queek. Warlord Queek Headtaker is the right claw to Warlord Nodwell, Grand Ruler of Clan Moors and member of the Council of 13. That Queek has risen so high in arguably the most powerful warlord clan is a credit to the terrible violence he unleashes on any in his way. Queek's vicious streak and vitriolic temper, along with his immense ego, are legendary amongst the Skaven, who regard such traits as greatly admirable. The majority of Queek's exploits have been in the tunnels, lairs, and abandoned dwarf holds beneath the surface of the world. The warlord's fame grows as word of his bloody deeds spreads through the Under Empire. Queek is feared by the goblins and respected by the orc tribes. Dwarfs have great hatred for Queek, whose name appears regularly in the Book of Grudges. By sheer audacity, Queek claimed a mighty prize from the scavenge horde, Dwarf Gouger, a weapon for... claimed a mighty prize from the scavenge horde, Dwarf Gouger, a weapon forged during the beginning of the war with the bearded things. Lost for centuries, Dwarf Gouger was recovered deep in the Night Goblin lairs near the ruins of Carrick Draws. At the time, Queek was a mere chieftain, but it was widely believed that he led the attacks that claimed the Darksome Hole for Clan Moors. In fact, it hadn't been Queek, but he claimed it had been with conviction and slew any who denied him, and was therefore granted first scavenge rights. So it was that the wicked maul, a deal for punching through steel plate, once more became the bane of the dwarfs. Queek has perfected a furious windmill style of attack, fighting simultaneously with Dwarf Gouger on a barbed sword, slashing, puncturing, and snapping with his razor-sharp teeth. Although his scarlet-armored stormwomen often accompany him, Warlord Queek takes pleasure in personally dispatching enemy leaders. In his arrogance, Queek carries the severed heads of his latest opponents on a trophy rack to remind followers, and Warlord Nodwell, of the fighting prowess of the almighty Warlord Queek, the Headtaker, the Dwarf Smiter. Adorned upon spikes in Queek's collection are Krug Ironhand, Icket Slash of Fester Spike, and the hands of Baron Albrecht Kraus of Aberland. Warlord Nodwell relies on Queek, dispatching him to break enemy lines, storm defenses, and bring victory to Clan Moors. At the same time, Warlord Naldwell continues to hire assassins to slay Headtaker. All of this non-stop violence keeps Queek on his toes, too busy to scheme for Naldwell's ruling positions. So, definitely think that this is going to be the warrior lord that we'll see in the Skaven campaign here, or just the Skaven faction as a whole. I mean, the Dwarf Gouger is a magic weapon that he can have unlocked. It's probably going to be an increase to his attack power. I'm sorry, his weapon strength, as well as add AP to his attack. And also have a warp shard armor, which will probably help him. It'll probably give him a ward save, and will probably damage things around him, because what it does is it's a spiked plate armor, so people that attack him actually sustain damage. So I wouldn't be surprised if it had some sort of mechanic similar to that. But he's my kind of like my front runner for the warrior warlord for Skaven, and or at least legendary lord, I mean, for Skaven. But at that, guys, that pretty much rounds out the special characters and possible legendary lords for the Skaven army. And I hope you guys got a pretty good sense for what this army is kind of like, and how insane it's going to be once it actually hits the game, and how you guys will probably really enjoy taking on a whole new way to play Warhammer Total War, because I promise this army will not disappoint, and it's fun. It'll be fun to watch replays of these people. I'm sure the campaign is going to be filled with tons of little flavor things on these guys. They're going to be a blast. We got the Dark Elves and the Lizardmen coming up, so feel free to comment which one you'd like to see first. I'm open to do either one, whichever one you guys want to do immediately. Otherwise, I will choose. And if you have any other questions or comments about some of the lore that maybe you know a little bit better, again, the Skaven are not my forte, but I do really love them. Please let me know, ask questions, do whatever you want, guys. I'm always here to kind of guide you in the lore of Warhammer. But thanks for watching, and have a good one.